Okay.
Okay, so
Uh,
it's recording.
okay. I'll tell you what, I'll kind of do an intro and then it might be worth I'm gonna give you the floor a little bit and maybe even just you can intro the show a bit because I think you'll be able to I don't know Lynn, so maybe you can also mention a little
Uh,
bit and then I think it might be well anyway, look, I'll intro it and then we'll just we'll just let it all unfold naturally like a conversation, I guess. That's how I like to do it anyway. So um
uh,
all right. All right.
I'll let you start with the introduction.
Yeah, there we go. How am I coming? Let's get get some nice lighting. Do you want me to do the long bio for you? Because what I was thinking was it would be a nice hook for the audience if we could just talk about the show, talk about Lynn first, and then I'll do the bio for you if that's okay.
Okay.
Because this first 10 seconds are sort of the where we grab their attention. All right, ready? Okay, I'll just intro this. All right. Uh, okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's show. I'm bringing back a regular guest now, Jerry Marzinsky. You guys love him. You've got loads of questions from always. Firstly, Jerry, thanks for making it on. We nearly didn't make it, but here we are.
That was a close call.
Yeah, yeah. The gremlins in the system. There was interference already trying to stop us from having this conversation, but we
Looks
did it.
like it.
We
It looks
synced.
like
Yeah, we synced up. And Jerry, before I kind of give the audience your bio again for everyone to know a little bit more about your background, would you like to just outline what today's show is going to be about? Lynn, who's going to come on, who's a guest who you know, and also just generally a little bit more about the topic itself.
okay. Well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jerry Marzinsky. I've spent time working in virtually every kind of mental health uh, unit in the United States over the last 40 or so years. And the entire time, uh, I was attracted to studying, or seems like spirit threw me in there, studying the voices that schizophrenics hear, that the psychiatric mafia insist are hallucinations. All right. Um, and that's what I believed when I graduated graduate school. I got out of graduate school. I thought they were hallucinations. I went to work at the biggest, if not one of the biggest psychiatric hospitals on the planet. There were 10,000 people there, 10,000 patients when I got there. And I worked with the Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and what we were looking for was the highest functioning of patients in that hospital. So we could teach them a vocational skill and get them out working, right? And it turned out in a lot of cases, the highest functioning were paranoid schizophrenics, except for the voices they were hearing, okay? And I believed when I first got there that the voices were hallucinations. Um, but that didn't fit with what I was seeing. Okay, so um, I've watched patients arguing with those voices, carrying on full-blown conversations with them. Okay, and it sounded like one end of a telephone, so you couldn't hear who was talking, but you could hear the patients responding, and they were responding with full sentences, complete thoughts. You know, it wasn't word salad, like I thought. And um, I got suspicious then. And what got me curious was, um, you know what? I didn't send Lynn a link.
You want to do
I gotta
that? Yeah,
Let me send her a
yeah,
link
send her the
first.
link. I was gonna I was wondering about that.
Okay.
Yeah. She might be trying to go into the old one.
Yeah, that's what she'll do.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know where that came from. It just popped out of nowhere right in the middle of my.
See that is that an entity telling you that?
Might have been. It might have been a good one.
Yeah, it is a good entity.
Um, copy invitation.
I can also send it to her if it's easier.
No, I got it. It's on its way.
Oh, it's on its way. Okay, great.
Let me get back to you now.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
So um, I noticed that these voices were interfering with the students. Okay. So just as they were about to graduate, these voices would get them to do something stupid. You know, they'd start arguing in class or fighting in class or skipping class. Um, and I'd ask them why are you doing that? You're about to graduate. You almost had a certificate here and you're sabotaging yourself. And they would say that the voices were getting loud. They were interfering. Uh, so I was wondering, well, what are these things? Because all through graduate school, they taught us these things were hallucinations. They, you think hallucinations make no sense. They're like just stupid stuff, noises and I thought they were like word cabbage or something like that. So I started asking, I was curious, why aren't any of the other staff wondering about what these voices are telling these patients? Because the ones who were hearing the voices were the ones that were getting in the most trouble. So I was curious about that. None of them were interested. They had bought what was taught in school was that these were hallucinations and that's all there was to it. They didn't question it. You know, I was raised not to trust authority. So I started asking these patients, what are these voices saying? You know, and I found out that they were running patterns. And one of the first patterns I saw was that they were negative. They didn't say anything good. It was all bad stuff. Uh, they were derogatory. They were insulting. They were abusive. They were destructive. Um, they might have they might have started out positive, telling the person that they were friendly spirits and that they could do stuff for them. They could let them know stuff that they normally couldn't know. But invariably, once they got the victim's trust, they attacked them. Let me turn on the lamp here, and then would turn their life into pure misery. So I started asking scores of them, and what are these voices telling you? And it was always bad stuff. Right? So I was wondering, well, if they're supposed to be hallucinations, which are random, they're all over the place, then why are they running this negative pattern? And what is holding them on this negative pattern? Why aren't they random like regular hallucinations? And I've seen plenty of hallucinations, and they're unpredictable. You know, this negativity was very predictable. Okay. The next thing I saw was that they were anti-religious. Okay. So I remember one patient coming to me and saying, listen, when I pray the 23rd Psalm, these voices go nuts. They get angry. They don't like it. They curse me. Um, they get louder. They torment me more. So I started asking about that, and I started passing out the 23rd Psalm to other patients who were also psychotic and hearing voices, and their report was the same. Okay? The voices got louder, meaner, and more obstinate when they started praying. So then I started asking them, you know, have you ever attended church? And I asked dozens of them. They said, yeah, the voices react to church. The pattern was if they were weak, they would shut up in church. If they were moderate strength, they would get louder and they would block out what the preacher was saying. And if they were very strong, they would actually drive the person out of the church. Okay. So these patterns went on and on and on, and now we got like 23 of them. The third most important was that they create negative emotion. And then once they do that, it's almost like they're trying to bring the patient down to a low vibration. Once they do that, they energetically drain their victims. And I had one patient tell me that he could actually feel his energy leaving when those voices were attacking him. Now, I have no idea how they do that, but that's a pattern. They actually will drain their victims when they get them upset. They get louder after sunset. They get louder when ignored. They foster self-destructive behavior. And there's 23 more patterns that I have on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. You can go to articles and see them there for yourself. You know, now the psychiatric mafia said and still insists they're due to a biochemical imbalance of the brain. That was a lie made up by Eli Lilly in the 70s when they came out with Prozac. And then they used it to sell their drugs. Okay? So then the universities picked up on it, and now it's been disproven over and over and over again, and they're still using it. It's a lie. But now they're changing their vernacular a little bit, and they say, oh, it is believed that schizophrenia is caused by a biochemical imbalance of the brain. So, these voices are very real. They carry on meaningful conversations. I've spoken with them. And I learned the most about them in the prison I worked at for 18 years. Because in the psychiatric hospital, when one of the patients that I was questioning his voices, he went and he told one of the psychiatrists that I was asking him about his voices. The next thing I knew, the next morning, I ended up in the psychiatrist's office being told, these are hallucinations. Don't be asking questions about them, because what you're doing is reinforcing the hallucination and making the patient worse. That was bullcrap. I knew it at the time, but you can't say anything to psychiatrists. They're arrogant as the day is long. Right? So that happened twice. So psychiatry doesn't even want you asking questions about what these things are. They have no research into them at all. They've not done any studies on the voices, which is odd because they're one of the main symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia. Okay? They drive paranoid schizophrenia. Okay? If you get rid of the voices by any means possible, the paranoid schizophrenia vanishes. It's gone. Right? They don't understand that. They don't understand that these voices are demons. They are entities. They're parasitic entities. Okay? So what I did is I arranged for Lynn Monet to come on. Now, Lynn was she was an RN, and while she was going through school, she did now, one thing interesting about her, she's been able to see spirits ever since she was a little girl, right? And her mother didn't try to talk her out of it. Her mother say, well, okay, tell me what you see. And she didn't try to discourage her or mock her or say they were bad dreams or anything like that. So she still can do this, right? So when she was about to graduate nursing school, she had to go through an internship. And one of the places she was doing that internship was a psych hospital. Right? So she was able to see these things in the psych hospital. And she can draw pictures of what they look like. She knocked one off of a girl's back. So she was able to see them, right? So I wanted to get somebody on who was brave enough to talk about this stuff. She's near retirement now, so she doesn't care whether they jump her or not. Because I waited until I was retired before I got speaking about this stuff, because I know they would have went after me. And I dropped my regular state license because I know they would have went after it. Right? But I kept investigating these things over and over and over again. I saw they ran patterns. Right? So I started thinking this was in the prison, because I couldn't really study them in the state hospital for fear of what psychiatry would do. I think psychiatrists were afraid of these things, and they were getting beat up by schizophrenics at a rate higher than any other doctor or personnel in the hospital, except for attendant staff who were on that ward with psychotics 24 hours a day. And they were only spending like 15, 20 minutes a month with these patients with schizophrenics. And I always wondered, well, what are they saying to them in 15 or 20 minutes that are causing these guys to, knock their clocks? It was a mystery to me. What are they doing? Why are they getting beat up more than anybody else? More than psych nurses, more than dentists, nurses, psychologists, counselors. They were getting beat up more than any of the other staff at the hospital, except for attendant staff who were with these patients 24 hours a day. It never made any sense to me. at the end of 7 years, there was one girl. I don't know if I said this before. It's one girl who was about to finish cosmetology class. She's making good grades. She would have made a good worker. And if they went off their medications 3 times, we would discharge them because if they're not taking their meds while they're being handed to them in the hospital, they're certainly not going to take them when they get out. All right. So we would discharge them if they stopped taking their meds 3 times. So she was upsetting the cosmetology class. She was hearing voices and screaming and cursing at people in the class. Had to go haul her out of there. And I had to call her mother and say, listen, she's being discharged. She went off her meds for the 3rd time. And that's all we had back then was those meds. And psychiatry would say that's the only thing that would cure it. Now, counseling, was like shooting a rhino in the butt with a BB rifle. It was like talking to a rock. Counseling didn't have any effect on these people at all. It had no effect on their voices. You know, every counseling technique that we had learned in graduate and undergraduate school was worthless. It didn't have any effect with schizophrenics. It might have worked some with normal people, but not with schizophrenics. So at the end of 7 years, we had that one girl who went off her meds, and her mother went, please, please don't send her away. I can't deal with her. So she said, I'll come up and we'll find out why she went off her meds. And I said, okay, fine. I'll meet you up next Friday. So she came up that next Friday, and we were talking, and we called the girl in, and both of us are talking to her saying, why? Why did you go off your meds? If you went off in the 3rd time, you would be thrown out of the program. You knew that. You were warned. You were told. Why did you go off your meds again? She said, you won't believe it. I said, listen, I've heard some really strange stuff since I've been working here. I don't think you have anything to say that's going to, freak me out. She says, okay, well, the voices told me that the psychiatrist was poisoning me. All right. And they pointed to the side effects of the medications as proof that she was being poisoned. And in reality, she was being poisoned because
Right.
those drugs are very toxic. They have very toxic side effects, a long list of toxic side effects. And it's clear that they are being poisoned. And what they've done is autopsies on these people who were in state hospitals for long periods of time taking these neuroleptic medications. And what they found was that it rotted out their brain and their central nervous system. Their brains were shrunk like walnuts. So when the researchers who was researching this published a paper on it, and they somehow got it past the big pharma, which controls most of the universities at this point, and what they publish, they screamed bloody murder when they saw it. Oh no, it's not our drugs, it's the schizophrenia doing this stuff. And the researchers said, okay, they started feeding those drugs to rats, mice, and monkeys, and found out that their brains were shrunk also. All right. Then they published this stuff, and big pharma was they were very upset because they're making global antipsychotic sales. Okay, this is neuroleptic meds to treat psychosis, schizophrenia, was at 14.54 billion in 2021. Billion, not million, billion. Estimated to soar to 15.5 billion in 2022. It's probably up above that now. For antidepressants, it was expected to, by 2023, to soar to 15.98 billion. So they're making a fortune off these things. They don't want the truth out. They don't want people knowing that they shrink your brain. They cause neurological damage with long-term use. And they don't tell their patients that either. They say, oh, well, you might get akinesia or some, tongue darting or some shakiness. And what they do is they'll mask it with cogent, but the destruction still goes on. And they're giving these to kids. They're feeding them to kids. Right here.
Lynn's here, by the way, just to let you know.
What?
Lynn's here. I don't know if you want to welcome her in.
Oh, there's Lynn.
There's Lynn. Hi, Lynn.
Hi,
She
Good
had
to
to
meet
make
you.
herself all right.
good to meet you. I'm
We
putting
had,
my earplugs in and I'll
there we
be
go.
ready to go. Hey, your
Okay.
haircut looks great, Jerry.
I had to get turned into a mop, so I had to cut it. So,
Looks good.
so we started a little bit ahead of you, and I'll be done in a minute. And then this
That's
is
fine.
I already kind of roughly introduced you.
Okay.
Told them
Hi.
that you were able to see these spirits from the time you were a young kid, and then told them a little bit about your internship there. So
Okay.
um, I'm going to just finish up in a minute here. So
Alrighty.
right now, there's more than 7.2 million kids in the United States on psychiatric drugs. More than 622,000 of them are under the age of 5. More than 80,000 of them are on ADHD drugs, which are amphetamines. Okay? More than 38,000 of them are on antidepressants. More than 85,000 are on antipsychotics. These are the drugs I told you that rot out the brain. And they're giving them to kids. They have no conscience whatsoever. I mean, over 389,000 are on anti-anxiety drugs, which are addictive. Okay. So, back then I started studying the voices, and I saw they ran 23 patterns. Like I said, you can find them on my website at jerrymarzinsky.com. See them for yourself. Those of you who are working with schizophrenics or have schizophrenic children, you can see these patterns. They're not hidden in some kind of mystical chemical imbalance or some kind of genetic anything. They kicked them up there so the regular population couldn't verify what they were seeing themselves. Only a very, very small number of people could verify what they were saying. And it took them, 40 years to get around to finding that there was no chemical imbalance in the schizophrenic's brain. They don't even know what the chemical balance of the brain should be, let alone having a chemical imbalance. Right? So I saw these patterns, and I started messing around with the patterns, seeing what I could do to disrupt them. And in the prison, I had small groups of 13 to 15 prisoners who would tell me in real time what the voices were telling them in response to what I was asking them to do. So I'd do stuff like hand out the 23rd Psalm and see what effect it had. I'd do whatever I could think of to interfere with those patterns. And after a while, those prisoners started coming back and saying they scream when it's time to come see you. They don't want me to come see you. They're telling me you're crazy, you're stupid. Forget about what I'm saying. But almost all of them hung in there. So after a while, after giving them different things to do to disrupt those patterns, they all started coming back and saying the voices don't like what you're doing. They don't like us doing what you're asking us to do. And this was, 12 or 15 of them, one after another, come back. They didn't know each other. They came in, they're all saying the same thing. Right. So then there was one who, when we were finished working that day, he turns around in the doorway and he says, you know what you're doing is dangerous, don't you? And I just looked at him like, that was news to me. I didn't think it was dangerous. I'm going, well, they're in your brain. They're not in mine. They don't have me. They got you. But I didn't say anything. And he just turned around and walked away. But I remembered that. It was like, okay, I'm not going to throw that away. I kind of filed it in the back of my mind for just in case. So this kept going on. I didn't quit. And then the next thing, one came in, and I don't know how he got into the medical unit. I didn't send him a pass. He knocked on my door. I opened it up, and I was surprised to see him. And he goes, "The voices want to talk to you." I said, "They want to talk to me personally?" He goes, "Yeah, they want to talk to you personally." And I'm like, that never happened before. In like the 25 or 30 years prior, that had never happened. It was always the patient would tell me what the voices were saying, and I would tell the patient to tell them to go stick their heads in the toilet or whatever I had to say to them. And it carried on some conversations with them too. They were nasty, and then after I saw that you could speak to them and they could carry on conversations, then I got this strong feeling that I shouldn't be talking to them. So I stopped doing that. But I saw that it could be done. And Wilson Van Dusen was doing the same thing before I was up in a state hospital in California. He was carrying on conversations with these things too, but he was trying to make friends with them. I knew they were nasty. I knew they were enemies. So I let this guy in, and we both sat down. And I said, okay, what do they got to say? And these words came out of his mouth. Uh, he said, you have no right to interfere with our way of life. And it was like, boom, you know, my head exploded, because up to that time I was rationalizing them away. I was thinking, you know, it's something to do with the subconscious mind, or there's some other explanation for it other than demons. But when I heard that, our way of life, you know, and then I look at him and he goes, those weren't my words. I didn't say that. That came from them, you know. And I said, well, tell them this. And he said, they can hear everything you're saying. They can see everything you're doing. I don't have to tell them anything. And that kind of surprised me too, you know, because I wasn't sure. And so it was at that moment where I realized that these things weren't hallucinations, that these things were conscious, negative, destructive entities. And it blew me away. I mean, it was like my mind just boom. I was like, what am I getting into? Where's this all going? I didn't have any roadmap for this. I had it. And I just closed my office and stared out the window all day, you know, it was finally, I had my denial system completely collapsed. You know, I had no explanation other than that these things were demons. So I kept going. And then the next thing, I was reading a book called The Voice of Knowledge by Miguel Ruiz, who's a South American shaman. And he was talking about these things being parasites also. So I always was asking these patients question after question, hundreds of questions. I was always bombarding them with questions. And I knew they were parasites. So here's Miguel saying that these things are parasites. They're draining these people. So I brought that book into the prison, outlined that part of the paragraph where it talked about them being parasites. And I brought in another inmate who I'd been working with, and I said, I'd like your opinion on what this guy has to say. So I started reading that paragraph about them being parasites. And soon as it got to the point where it was talking about the voices being parasites, this loud electrical crackling erupted behind my head. And it was loud. It sounded just like an arc welder. And then it started moving from behind my head off to the right wall of my office. And it slowly crackled all the way up the right wall of the office. And I was kind of splitting my attention between looking at that patient that I was thinking he was a prisoner, really. And I pushed my desk chair against the wall, because I'd looked at him and he had this glazed over look on his eyes, and he was just staring at me and I'm like, he's going to attack. So I pushed my chair against the wall, so if he came at me, I could kick him back and I wouldn't fall over in my chair. And then I was splitting my attention between looking at him and trying to see what was making this crackling noise. I didn't see anything. I didn't smell anything, but it was just as loud as a arc welder. So it went all the way up the wall, and then it went across the top of the ceiling, and I could then kind of track it and watch him at the same time. And then it came down the left wall, and this took about 30 seconds. It wasn't brief. It wasn't anything you could explain away. It kept going. And then it started coming down the left wall near where I was sitting, and there was a Rubbermaid trash can near my left leg, and it jumped in there and was crackling in the trash can. So I leaned over and I looked in the trash can, and there was nothing there. There was absolutely nothing there. It was an empty plastic bag that the inmate porter had put in there the time before that, right? The night before. So he gets up slowly and he goes, I gotta leave. And he shuffles out. And I'm like, get out of here. Go, go, go. So when he left, I examined the walls. I didn't see any burn marks. There was no evidence that had ever happened. I walked out into the hall. I checked the other offices. The nurses weren't in yet. The doctor wasn't in yet. There was nobody in the hall. There was no explanation for that crackling whatsoever. None. And I started wondering if I was going psychotic now after working with these guys for so long. You know, am I starting to lose it? Am I starting to get psychotic now? So it kind of scared the dickens out of me. But, you know, I experienced it. And again, my mind, boom, it blew. And I'm like, where's this going? Where am I going? I don't know what's happening. I have no cognitive map of these things. I've never had this kind of experience before. Um, and I just sat there and stared out the window for the rest of the day. I dismissed all my appointments and just sat there staring out the window. And it was 3 months, 2 or 3 months later, I called this guy back and pulled him in, and he looked good. He had a lot of energy, and I was expecting him to be, beat to crap. If something like that was tormenting him to could do that, I was expecting him to be drained, just drained, looking like a wreck. No, he looked good, and that shocked me. So I started asking him. I said, "You look good," and he goes, "Well, I was doing what you taught me to keep the voices away, but it didn't get rid of them. But it's kind of like a Mexican standoff. They're not gaining any ground either." Okay. So I said, "Have a seat." And we did a little small talk. And I said, "Do you remember the last time you were in here a few months ago?" He goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Did you hear that crackling that went around the office?" And he goes, "Yeah, I heard it." He said, "But I was surprised you did," meaning me. So apparently he hears that stuff periodically and other people don't. He told me one other person that another prisoner who heard it once, but he just ignored him, like it didn't happen. And I asked him, I said, "You looked really strange when you walked out of my office, during the time you were there." I said, "What were the voices telling you when you left?" And he said, "They were telling me to go get a shank and stick it in your gut," which is shank is a homemade knife.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, well, he wouldn't do that. I've been working with him for 6 months. He's not gaining any ground, but he's not losing any. And I said, "Well, why didn't you do it?" And he said, "I couldn't find one, and nobody would give me one." Right. So I've been harping for years now that these things are not hallucinations. These things are actually demonic, parasitic entities, and that they are destroying the people that they infest. They get in by severe emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. They get in with drug use, like especially methamphetamine. They get in by using Ouija boards and sometimes tarot cards, or doing witchy type stuff, uh, seances and that kind of stuff. Right. So there are other ways to treat these things. The Mace energy method, which I have a write up on my website about that, will get rid of the trauma that these people suffer. Once you drain that trauma, the voices get very weak. And it's interesting. If the voices are strong and I try to use mace with them, they will actually interfere with the process. Yeah. But if they're weak, they disappear. So it depends on how strong they are. They don't want to be messed with. And I'm a mace therapist. Lynn is studying to be a mace therapist. It's the most effective psychotherapy. It's an energetic psychotherapy. It's on the cutting edge. It works better than anything I've ever seen in my 40 or so years on the front lines. It actually gets rid of trauma. It dissolves it.
I did 2 sessions of it.
Yeah. Lynn just had a remarkable healing with it too. It was a physical healing that she had that she didn't believe happened. I mean, so I'm going to turn it over to her now. Like I said, Lynn's an RN. She's
What does that? Sorry, what's an RN mean? What's an?
registered nurse.
Oh, sorry. Okay, registered nurse. Right. Okay. All right. Lovely. And yeah. So should we just hand it to Lynn? Lynn, do you want to take it away and tell your story, or should we?
Well, first of all, hi, John. Thank you
Hi.
for having me. It's very nice to meet you. I just had a 62nd birthday yesterday, so I'm still reeling from the weekend of my birthday.
You're
And
62.
so, yes,
Oh my
just turned
goodness me.
62.
That's supernatural.
Thank you. Thank you. Jerry, when he was talking about the macing, and if I could just, I had Jerry do the mace on me, and I didn't feel like I really needed it. And the way that it works in a nutshell is, how sometimes people say, "Oh, darn, she just knows how to push my buttons." it takes the buttons away. So you don't react to those things anymore. And then it makes people react differently towards you too. So in the process, it heals everybody. But there were several things that Jerry was talking about. I'm a little bit off my game here because I don't know where you all have left off
Well, you can just tell, if you want to just tell your story from the beginning and how you started noticing the entities and all that, if that's a good way to do it.
Okay. Well, Jerry had said that he'd mentioned I've seen things ever since I was little. I mean, really little. I mean, I remember a time when I was 5 years old with my brother where we saw a schoolmate of his and his best friend enter into my parents' master bedroom, and it turned out that day he and his family were in a auto accident, and the whole family died. And he showed up in the bedroom through the ectoplasmic portal in the bedroom, and so that's kind of where it all started. I was born and raised Presbyterian. My mom took a jaunt with the Jehovah's Witnesses when I was 10. And even though I was still seeing things, I became afraid of my gifts because of traditional religion, which is a lot of reasons why some of these souls don't cross over too, and they connect on people. But because of that, I would run out of the room just as fast as anybody else when I would see something. So it wasn't until I came forward that I purchased a house that was so badly haunted that I never moved into it. I wrote a book about it. I've actually got a book series with that one that reconnected me with people of like mind, so I didn't feel so like such a weirdo anymore. And I was then able to nurture my gifts and that sort of thing. So I've always had the gift of second sight. I've been a nurse for 40 years. I've since retired. I also have a degree in biological science as well as a certified death doula. I've worked in end-of-life care 17 years of those 40 years as a nurse. So I've seen people come out of their bodies at the time of death. I've been in the room for some very beautiful things of hearing people talk about babies that haven't been born yet, and a blind woman that could see the color of her son's shirt because her deceased husband was telling her. So, and again, also the medical community saying that those are hallucinations. They're always saying that people are hallucinating, and some of these people are gifted, and some of these people legitimately have these, as Jerry said, these parasitic attachments that will latch on to people for all of the reasons that he had already listed. But so I've been able to experience, as there's a dark side to paranormal, there's a light side to paranormal, which is a beautiful angelic part, and death and dying, which is a whole nother show, not this one, but
why didn't you start off a few years earlier when you were doing your internship at the psych hospital?
Okay. I went back to school later in life in my 40s to further my nursing degree. And after having that experience with the haunted house, excuse me, they're messing with me. But the haunted house that I was so haunted I never moved into, but there were people getting clawed in that house.
I've seen that.
Yeah, when I went
We talk
to
about that at some point, Lynn. Can we go back to the
Sure.
story at some point? I'll make a note for us to go. That's so interesting. We have to talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, well, the reason why I'm mentioning the clawing part is because when I went through the rotation in the psych ward, I was having my psych class. I had to go in and monitor people a little bit differently than as a nurse. You don't put your hands on them. It's more hands off and monitoring than you would as a nurse, where you're caring for people and touching people and that sort of thing. And there were 8 nurses and a teacher. We went into this area that was the intake area. And we actually had to sign papers that if we got hit with something or bitten or pinched or punched, that we couldn't hold the facility responsible, because the people in the intake area, they were just balancing their meds. So these people were, some of them were still very combative. They were still out there kind of thing. So as we're standing there and the teacher's gone to the nurse's station to see about getting our assignment for patients, there was a young woman, looked to be in her early 20s, short hair, a little bit chunky, fuller figured, and she walked over to the group and she pointed at me and she said, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, in that moment, I'm embarrassed and I'm looking over my shoulder and I'm like, please, please don't let her be talking to me, because I didn't want to be Lynn the weirdo that day. I just wanted to go in and be Lynn the student nurse like everybody else. So we were then ushered out of that room. However, myself and another nurse were placed back in there. And this young woman, she had on a pair of very short shorts, a top that was like a tube top with straps so you could see a lot of her skin. And I'm mentioning this because when my fellow nurse and I were sitting at the picnic tables that were bolted to the floor doing our notations on our patients, they have segments of things that they do, like they'll go and sit through a counseling session or they'll go meet with their social worker. And ours were away doing those things at that time. So we were charting. The young lady walks over and she sits down next to me. She starts talking to both of us, the other nurse and I, about how she had been molested and raped by her pastor when she was like age 10. Then her mother got remarried when she was 14, and the stepfather started raping her. So she ran away at age 16 and started devil worship. And she realized that that wasn't the right thing for her to do either. And she started hearing voices, and she could hear 25 different voices, and they were diagnosing her with schizophrenia. And I'm looking at this woman's skin, and she is covered in claw marks, and they look like cat scratches. Sometimes they're single, sometimes there's a couple of them, like 3 or 4 of them in a row and side by side. But she had like single ones, and they were going on all different angles, and they were in areas on her back that there is no way, unless she was a contortionist, that she could have reached herself in that position and made those claw marks on herself. And she was, yeah, and she was even talking to us about the fact that one of the voices had a very, very long fingernail and was scratching the inside of her female parts. And the facility was saying that she was self-inflicting those. And I'm like, this girl's got, these are claw marks, because I recognized them from that house that I had previously owned, where my best friend was clawed to the point of bleeding on her back and stomach. Well, I stood next to her, and there was a demon in the room, a hellhound that was going in between our legs and stuff at that time. So she gets called away for her turn for whatever her meeting was, or meds or whatever. And as she gets up to walk away, I can see on her back, and forgive me, I don't have the picture here with me because I kind of raced to pull things together, but it appeared like potatoes, clear potatoes, stuck all over her back, like they were stuck inside of a clear pillowcase. They were clustered together like grapes over each shoulder. And some of the faces were inverted, so the mouth was on the top and the eyes were on the bottom. Excuse me. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, no joke. She's hearing 25 different voices. She's got attachments on her. Excuse me. I don't know why this sometimes happens, because they don't like being talked about. But anyway, I haven't had a tickle in my throat all day. So she gets up and she walks away, and I'm just thinking to myself, this poor lady, she really is hearing these voices, and here they are, claiming that she has schizophrenia. So when she came back, I noticed that she went into her room, and I went and I knocked on her door frame. And she invited me in, and I said to her, I said, if you repeat what I'm going to tell you, they're going to think that you're crazier and keep you in here longer. But I believe that you are hearing 25 different voices because you got attachments on your back. And the one thing that I noticed about her face is it started to kind of look agitated. Her facial expression started, she turned away from me and started to walk away. And I proceeded, the way that they were connected, I know I'm jumping around, is it looked like a horn, or like a hollow horn, kind of a brownish tan color, and it came to the top of her shoulder and clasped underneath her armpit, but didn't go all the way around. And there was a little bit of a gap where it was elevated. And I do take them off of people. I haven't been doing it as much lately because I've had some other things in my own life going on. And you have to be very balanced and very clear, not sick when you do these sort of things, because they will exacerbate anything you've got going on. So, but I couldn't help myself. Excuse me. So I reached underneath them and I pulled them away, and they started to fall to the ground. I started stomping them into the ground. Some of them were rolling away, and the lady immediately turned around. Her face was more softened, and she said, it felt like you were pulling grass off my back. And I told her, I said, look, this is a temporary fix. Some of them rolled over by your bed. They can reattach. Where you were living before you came here probably has them there too. But when you get out of here, You need to find someone that can help you remove those attachments. And lo and behold, I was in a store. We have a store here called a Walmart, which is kind of a little bit of everything store. And I was in looking at candles. I was crouching down on the floor. And all of a sudden, I see these two women at the end of the aisle, and they're kind of whispering to each other. And I'm checking my shoe for toilet paper and making sure my zipper's not down. I'm wondering why they're pointing at me, this sort of thing. And all of a sudden, I heard one of the young ladies say to the other one, "I know that's her." And I thought, oh, well, maybe they've read one of my books. Maybe it's a fan, coming over. So I stood up and she walked over and she said, "Do you remember me?" And she looked familiar, but she looked so different. She had lost weight. She had this cute little blonde bob. Her skin was pink, whereas before it looked kind of an ashen color because they were sucking her energy from her, which they do that. And she said, "You're the nurse. You're the nurse that helped me." And she did go somewhere and get help with those attachments, just like I said. And she said that she was no longer on her schizophrenic medication. She was now on a low dose of anti-anxiety medication that she would take as needed. And she was going into her second year of dental hygiene school. So it totally turned her life around. And the thing is, too, is, a lot of these people in these mental facilities, they're gifted. They're not they're not crazy. Some of them do have attachments. I've seen a lot of the people with addiction. They have attachments that I call archons in my book that look like they can be a crab shape, they can be a spider shape, or they look reptilian, sometimes with a tail that curls, and sometimes a human buttocks and no tail of that reptilian type. And they attach also at the shoulders, and they have like the 4 finger attachments, 4 toe attachments, and they attach in at the hips. The spiders kind of collect the 2 legs and the 2 legs and attach, and the crabs do the same thing. But their heads align with the people's heads, and you'll see them peeking over every once in a while, and they try to hide. And the thing that's very distinct about those is that they have a flap that starts at the top of their head and goes back to the nape of their head. It comes out to a point like a fin, only it's floppy. And I know this because when people come away from their attachments, and the thing is, I want to mention this, the difference between a person with an addictive attachment and a person who's got attachments from schizophrenia, they have not invited those attachments. Those attachments have been parasites that have latched onto someone who has suffered great trauma, and their natural energetic field has holes in it like Swiss cheese from either surgery or trauma, and they find ways in. The people with addiction invite those parasitic things in due to their addiction, and they come in and and usually it's entities that are also addicted to the substance. There are many kinds of addictions. If people could see all of the dead people that I see standing around them in bars and cigarette breaks, and the guy that's in the porno peep show, he might be shocked that he's not in there alone. He's got a whole bunch of dead people standing in there watching with him, and he might want to charge admission for what he's doing in there. But if they could see what I see, a lot of them would never ever touch the stuff again. And when we pass away, we do keep all of our senses. We actually add on the additional one of telepathy and a couple of others as well. But with that being said, a lot of people, they argue about the smell because there's no olfactory nerve, but their ability to smell is memory recall. Like if you think about popcorn popping or chocolate chip cookies or pumpkin pie baking, you can smell it even though there's nothing cooking, if you think about it. So, and that's how powerful the mind is with thought and things like that way. But so, I mean, I saw many, many things in this psych ward, people that were being considered ill with hallucinations from schizophrenia. I have another lady also that I could share with you if you'd like.
Yeah, go.
Okay. There was a little lady, and it was so sad because they had this one section, and it was all of these people that were in there. It was all women in there, in this side of the room. And the nurse was telling us how very rarely did any of the people in there get visitors, because everybody thought grandma's nuts, or their mom's nuts, so they don't bother to come and visit them anymore because they're woo-woo and everybody's uncomfortable. Plus the kind of energy that kind of gets carried with some of the people with attachments, it's a little, if you're sensitive to it, it's a little uncomfortable. But anyway, we went into this room and there was this lovely lady and she was sitting at this round table and there were 3 other chairs and she was in the 4th chair and she's having a conversation. Perfect hostess, but it was like she was on the telephone. By what she was saying, you could tell what the response was. So it wasn't like this vocabulary salad that they usually have, a bit of a mix of words. She was being very, very articulate, very clear. Would you like some coffee? Would you like some sugar in your coffee? Oh, is that too hot? Be careful when you drink it. And the nurse said, oh, that's so and so, and she's talking to people that aren't there. But I could clearly see in all 3 of those chairs, there were spirits sitting with her at that table. And this woman wasn't schizophrenic, she was an empath. She could see them. And because people are not comfortable with people with gifts, they try to demonetize them, they try to make them crazy. When they don't realize that these gifts are God-given gifts, you're born with them. Everybody is. They're either nurtured or they're not. You're either made to be afraid of them or you grow with them. And unfortunately, the generations past, what you can't see, feel, or taste is a no-no or scary or woo-woo. And that's why people are so afraid of people with gifts. They're also afraid of people that are passing, talking about loved ones being in the room that are deceased, even if it's somebody that they know. They get real uncomfortable with it. They want to run and get the nurse to give them the meds to quiet down the patient because they don't like hearing about dead people standing with them in the room.
Do you have, Pete, any doubt in your mind whatsoever that the voices that these people are hearing are spirits? Is there any doubt in your mind?
No, they're parasitic. They are some of them, people have the choice to cross over or not at the time of death. Sometimes they remain here on Earth for reasons, like one that I love to tell this story. There was a fellow that was passing and I was in front of his room and I saw the spirit of this man peeking around the poles, and I kind of invited him over to the cart, and I'm abbreviating this. And this gentleman, he was a handsome spirit and he appeared to be like from the 1800s with the way that he was dressed. He didn't appear to be extremely rich, but he wasn't poor either because he had nice clothes on, but not like fancy clothes. And he had this very heavy Irish brogue to his voice, redheaded, sort of thing. And I asked him, I said, why haven't you crossed over? And he said, "Me lady, I can't cross over." And I'm like, "Oh, sure you can. I can help you cross over. This person in this room right here is getting ready to cross, and their loved ones, you could see the angels bulging out of the room and the loved ones that were coming to collect this person." And I'm like, "Well, I could help you." And he says, "I can't cross over." He says, "My wife and my girlfriend are on the other side. And neither one knew about the other." His wife and his mistress is what he said. And neither one knew about the other. So there are sometimes reasons that they choose not to cross over. And a lot of times they'll attach to somebody just out of boredom to have something to do. And then there are these nasty ones. I recently sent a picture today, actually, to Jerry about, I want to call it a daybuk. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's that the Jewish religion talks about the spirit that is someone that chooses not to cross over because of their, what is the word? I can't pronounce the word. Their maladaptive, for lack of a better word, or their creepy nature that they had when they were still living. I can't think of the word, but malevolent. There you go, malevolent. And they go ahead and they attach on people. And a lot of times the people with schizophrenia, that's those types of people, those miserable souls that didn't cross over because they were nasty in life and they just want to create chaos with people. I mean, there's so much stuff coming out right now that even about satanic ritual abuse and the movie stars doing it in order to get, the politicians, I don't even want to get your show kicked off, so I won't even go there.
No, it's fine. You can say whatever you want, really. I was going to say, so, I was under the understanding that the entities that attach to people with, let's say, that have schizophrenia, they're from a different dimension. They're sort of reptilians, archons. I don't know what you'd call them, but you're also saying it could just be people that have died and they don't want to cross over and they attach to almost what encourage these people to get drunk and then they can feel the effects of that as well, or get involved in
Right.
carnal pleasure and then they can somehow vicariously feel that themselves. Is that the idea?
Yeah.
Yes, and also what you mentioned, they can be reptilian, they can be alien, they can be a lot of things, but usually, like in the case of this young woman, most of hers were just the voices, but there always seems to be one or two, sometimes three, that are more malicious, and they kind of control the rest. So, so even like with the voices, like what they were telling Jerry, they'll tell the other spirits the same thing. If the other spirit's like, yeah, that lady says she can cross me over, I want to cross over. No, you don't. She's lying, and you're going to go to hell. They play the same game with the spirits as they do with the humans. So, it makes it,
They tell there's ranks of them.
yes.
It's like in the army. You got the regular foot soldiers who appear to be assigned to destroy a particular person. And they're told that if they don't do that, they will cease to exist. And there is no light. They're told there's no light in them. And I played around with that for a while with the voices. I'd say, okay, let's go see, with talking to one of the voices. And I said, let's go, we'll go together. And we imagine that we're going down deep into the the spirit of the entity. And I said, do you see the light yet? And he goes, no, not yet. After a couple of times, they go, okay, I see it. I said, what's it look like? They said, it's a dim orange light. Okay. And I would tell them, well, your leaders told you that you had no light in you. So they lied to you. How do you feel about that? And they were furious at that. And it was one time after time after time. Each one I did that with, they were furious that they'd been lied to. And that struck me as strange because they were liars themselves. I mean, they lied about everything, but somehow that was important to them. And they were told that the light would hurt them. And I'd tell them, well, just stick your hand in the light. They go, no, it'll get burned. It'll burn me. And I go, no, it won't. Just quickly stick your hand in there. It didn't burn them. I said, okay, walk into the light. And they do. And I said, now call somebody that loves you or cares about you to come and get you out of here, because now you're in trouble. You've talked to me, you realized that they were lying to you, and you go back there, they're going to beat the crap out of you. So call somebody to come and get you. And somebody would show up, a grandmother, a mother. In some cases, it was an animal, a horse or a dog or something would come and get them and then take them away. Then after that particular voice was gone. So there was one day I was working with one guy, had three voices. We got rid of all three just the same way. Okay. And he insisted that was all there was, three voices. After we got rid of the third one, another voice appeared. And I said, where'd that come from? And he said, that was their boss and he's pissed. And I said, boss, you want to leave? He goes, no, get out of here. So yeah, there's echelons of them. And there was one girl where they weren't tormenting her enough, and their voices was replaced by meaner voices that would torment her more. So you get into it, it gets interesting.
So Lynn,
It does.
I'm
Excuse
oh,
me,
sorry, Lynn. I was just going to say, so you've seen some of these entities then, like what you said you stomped on a few, like what were they that you were seeing on people? The one where you said it's like pulling grass off her.
They actually appeared like misshapen potatoes. I mean, they were decent sized, but they were clustered together like grapes. So a lot of times when you see spirits traveling through the air, and I apologize for constantly clearing my throat. I also apologize if I'm talking a little too fast. So let me know if I need to slow down. But they were clustered together like grapes. And I thought that when I went to pull them off that they would be harder. And the thing is most of them travel in orbs when they're out of body. Even if your loved ones that have crossed over come back, like if you take a picture during the holidays and you can say, let's say you have a deceased parent and you say, Mom, I want you to get in the picture. They love to get in pictures. So you might see that orb type thing. And a lot of people are like, oh, no, that's just the camera. Oh, no. There's a look to the orb. It has some coloration to it. It's sometimes kind of milky. Sometimes there are two of them, one more clear and another one that travel together.
You look
and a
close
lot of
the structure to them also.
Yes, and if you look close to even over people's shoulders, you might see a smiling face if you look at that sort of thing. But these things were in an orb type, but misshapen looking thing because there's no bone structure, and they were kind of crammed together, some of them like grapes, so they were like smushing in on one another. So that's why some of them were more elongated and looking that way. But I mean, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen aliens, I've seen Bigfoot, I've seen I've seen hell dogs, I've seen demons, I've seen a lot of things that most people never see. I'm kind of desensitized to them. I have and again, they don't like me talking about this. I have my method of removing them quickly from the room. They don't like anything positive. They don't like love. They don't like laughter. They don't like joy. So even the people that that are hearing voices, tell them to laugh. Tell them to say, "Oh, I love me, I love me, I love me." They can't stand it. It's like reading Psalms. They start screaming like a bunch of worms on a hot plate. You know what I'm saying? They can't stand that because they've lost that ability, especially if they're demonic. They don't have the ability to have love or joy or even grieving for that matter. But man, they definitely feed off anything that's negative. It empowers them and gives them the opportunity and the ability to do more physical acts on people.
Yeah, so those of you who are hearing voices, do not watch war movies or murder mysteries
No.
or any of that negative stuff. It feeds them. They get stronger by watching that stuff. Stay away from negative people. Don't get isolated.
That's true.
They don't want you to have any family. They don't want you to have any friends. They want you isolated in a room by yourself where they're just working you over day after day after day after day, listening to their crap.
Right. And they're not inside of you, people. They are talking in your ear. And the reason why they can tell you some things about yourself that nobody could possibly know, like what you were doing in the bathroom on Tuesday, it's because they're watching you. So it's not because they're in your head, you're hearing them. So they're like around. When I see people with that archonic thing on them, the head is much smaller than the body. That's like a backpack on their backs. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. I'll see it every once in a while peek from one side to the other. And again, it's very distinct that the head is much smaller than the body, kind of the opposite of a baby where the head's much bigger and the body's much smaller in proportion. So and I kind of lost the track that I was going with that. But I mean, I see a lot of things in between the interdimensional veils. I see fae, elementals. I've got them on my property. I have pictures of those. So yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of things.
What's fae? Sorry.
Fae, elementals like fairies and gnomes and things like that.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
I have pictures that I took.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to share them with you.
Yeah.
So yes, and I didn't believe in that kind of stuff either, but now everything is just kind of presented that way. And I know it sounds off, but they're higher dimensional beings. They vibrate at a higher frequency. They live on the earth with us just like we do, but we don't see them because of their higher frequency.
Do they attach as well, Lynn, to us?
No, but they can. They don't really want to attach to us. They're they only became angry and naughty when they were deceived so many times by even the Native Americans. They used to feed the puckwudgies to the giants so that the giants wouldn't eat their tribes. So they betrayed them. And then the farmers, they would help with the work, and they just simply wanted part of the, whatever was grown, the potatoes or the vegetables, for themselves as their payment. And then the farmers would do mean things to trick them, and they were mistreated. So they kind of disappeared because of the mentality of humans and the frequency that they were choosing to lower themselves to vibrate in, that they couldn't be around them anymore. And now people think that they're ghosts in their houses, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes it's something like that. And again, we could do a whole nother show on that. And like I said, I come with pictures. So I have pictures of ghosts that I've taken myself. I have pictures I sent Jerry a picture that'll blow your mind, but I've kind of asked him not to show it to anybody because it will bring those things into your space. They can travel, they're energetic, just like thought is. They can travel through your electronics, your telephone. I mean, anything like that. Yeah, you're talking about them, they get curious, they want to come near. So what Jerry was saying about people avoiding violence and things like that, because we are literally electric and water in a meat suit, but our thoughts and all of the things that the medical field does not treat is the energy field. They treat the mental stuff, the physical stuff, anything that you can see, touch, or feel, or lick or taste, there, or imagine, but they don't deal with the energetic field that we all have. And
And your spirit is energy, your feelings are energy, your thoughts are energy, your memories energy. They don't deal with any of that.
yeah,
And the MACE energy method does. It's an energetic psychotherapy. Do you
that,
want to tell them about you just got cured of what you thought was a physical
okay, yeah.
with
A
MACE?
couple of things. First, with Jerry, when he first came to me and told me that he was going to give me a free session, I'm like, oh, I'm okay. Any of my stuff I've already dealt with, and da 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 da. Well, I was wrong. And I had some childhood trauma in my family. My father was a genius, a brilliant mathematician, but he was also a very nasty drunk. And so he would get physically violent. And there were things that I saw him doing to my mother that just would instantly give me that flight, fright kind of feeling, where I just wanted to run. It's almost like I couldn't breathe, like anxiety. And of course, I didn't ever think about it very often. But when we went through the MACE energy program, which you don't have to rehash this stuff. It's something that they walk you through, helping you remove it. You don't have to sit and talk about what your grandmother did to you for 3 months,
Yeah, the
type
therapist
thing.
doesn't even have to know what happened to you.
That's right.
You don't have to rehash it.
Which is better, because energetically what you think goes out into the universe, just like verbalization, and it comes back to you. So you definitely don't want to have to reverbalize the worst parts of your life and have it come back to you at another time. So, but anyway, after I had the first session with Jerry, it was kind of like when I went back to the most traumatic time, it was like I was now separated and looking through a window at it occurring. So my buttons weren't being pushed. I didn't have that flight, fright feeling anymore. The memory did not go away, because memories happen. You can't take memories away, but you can take away the energetic reaction in your system that makes you respond or react to it.
No emotional charge anymore. It's gone.
Exactly. So it's like the pushing your buttons thing, and it takes the buttons away. But most recently, I had just had a cancer scare. I had some blood work that came back kind of touchy, and found out that I had severe anemia. So they started testing me for myeloma, and fortunately it came back negative. But my anemia was still there. But even though my anemia started to elevate and get more into normal range, I still had this extreme exhaustion. And the kind of tired that you get with anemia is not like normal tired. I mean, it's a heavy tired where you just, whatever you're doing, you got to stop and lay down and go to sleep. And I was literally sleeping like 14 hours a day. And so I mentioned this just this last Tuesday to my teacher. And she said to me, let's try something and see if it's somatic. And I said, well, it can't be somatic, because I actually have blood work showing that I have this problem. So usually somatic issues are things that you create in your mind that are very real to you, but there's no medical evidence of. And I had medical evidence of mine. And she says, well, let's just try this anyway. Because I'm like, yeah, because it shouldn't be as bad as it is. And she did a treatment on me that within 5 minutes, the tiredness was gone. And I have not had any issues with that exhaustion. So it was something, not only was it medically an issue, now that it was no longer medically an issue, something in me was triggered, that I was holding on to that tired, needing to sleep, 14 hours a day. And I wasn't depressed. I mean, I'd get up, put on my makeup, brush my teeth. It's just going through my day, I'd get stuff done. And then all of a sudden I had to stop because of the tired feeling. But it's gone. Since Tuesday, it's gone. I'm up. I did take a little nap before this show only because I had company over the weekend for my birthday that left at 4 a.m. So I've been up since 4 a.m. and I didn't want to, get sleepy on the show. But that's normal. This other stuff was not normal. I mean, I was having to cancel shows and different things like that I was supposed to be doing in person, and because I just couldn't function.
Is that
So
is that actually connected to entity attachment yourself or not?
um, the somatic issues are kind of like post-traumatic stress. And Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong here. They're kind of like post-traumatic sense in the sense that they're catches and like ridges, which the MACE energy talks about.
They're negative energy that's built up.
Exactly. So
and it gets thrown into the subconscious by the ego. So
yes.
when you're under a lot of psychological pain, it's a non-survival type thing. So the ego takes and says, let me handle this, and it throws it into the subconscious, and then it locks it down. So it's no longer available to you. But
exactly.
Is it triggers. So what happens is anytime that somebody like the person who abused you shows up in your psychological sphere, that thing triggers, goes off, and it says either attack that person or run from them or avoid them. And it's like the person you hate that just keeps showing up over and over and over again. Right? This gets rid of the person you hate, and then the next person you hate, and the next person you hate until you don't hate anybody.
That's absolutely true. And the thing about it is even though it's not an attachment per se, you can, because of it, attract attachments because it is a negative. And I'm mentioning this because when Jerry mentioned pain, of course, that was a key piece. When I had purchased that haunted house that I never moved into, there was a period of time where my oldest daughter was complaining about shoulder and back pain. And I thought that it was her backpack because she would have to take a backpack to school every day that was very heavy. So I even went ahead and I got her a rolling book bag for her school things. And she still continued to complain about it. And there was one day that she was complaining about the pain so much. And this is a kid that's like 14 years old, 13, 14 years old. She's still, and just like her last year, going into her first year of high school or whatever it was, or her last year of middle school, like 8th grade or something like that. So she wasn't drug seeking in that sense. She wasn't around people like that. And of course, we only had Tylenol and Advil in the house. So, but she kept complaining. So finally, there was one day that she was complaining of pain so bad. And I even gave her the Tylenol and Advil together, which you can do. You can even give it to babies that way. And she was still complaining. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to take off work. So I thought maybe she had a clot or something in her shoulder that I needed to take her to the emergency room to find out what it is that's creating this pain. Maybe she's got a tumor. And then she fell asleep. And so I'm like, okay, if she's comfortable enough to sleep, if she wakes up, then I'm going to take her. And she ended up sleeping through the night to the next day. But the next day, I had plans to meet a lady and a gentleman that she was bringing with her that was a Native American that was supposed to come to the house to try to get the demons out. There were 2 demons and a young man that had hung himself in the house. There was a hell dog. And as there's a hierarchy of angels, there's a sub-hierarchy of demons. And as they go lower, the stronger that they get and the more physical acts they can do, and image and mental image impressions and things like that. So my daughter went with me to the house since I had, kept her home the next day to take her to the pediatrician. We had an appointment that afternoon. So she's sitting on this area where there was like a planter, and the house was on a half-acre lot. So the driveway was kind of long, and she was sitting a distance away. And when the people arrived, the lady got out of the car and she pointed at my daughter and she said, "Is your daughter complaining of back and shoulder pain on the left side?" I'm like, "Well, yeah. Well, how'd you know?" And she's like, "Well, because she's got an attachment on her back, and and so she did something energetically where she snapped it off, and brought it towards her. And she and the gentleman that was with her, they were stomping it into the ground. And I said, yeah, she's been complaining about really bad pain for about 6 weeks. I said, and I kept trying to figure out what it was. She said, well, I'm not surprised because it was a big one too. So these attachments can attach and cause pain for people. The thing about my daughter was then at that point, the lady said to me, she said, ask your daughter if she's still feeling any pain. I said, Brittany, how's your shoulder? And she's doing this with her shoulder. And then she's doing this like a helicopter, with her arm. And she says, there's no pain. And the pain never came back. It was, in fact, an attachment. So they can do that as well. They can attach on. Doesn't always mean that they are, but those ridges create opportunities of deficits in the energetic field and trauma that they can leave like a Swiss cheese, like a Swiss cheese look to their art field that allows that the spirits can see and allows them in sometimes and to attach. And they kind of follow you around for a while to see if you're interesting enough to attach to or not. They want somebody that's got a lot of chaos and drama in their life because they feed off the lush. It's like chocolate for them. They love it. So, yeah.
Was that did you say that was connected to the haunted house that you mentioned with the clawing? Was that the same story or not?
Yeah, yes. That was the same house with the clawing. I had purchased the house. I had 4 different workers come. The first 3 didn't stay past 2:00 in the afternoon. With the third one, I finally found out why. I can tell you that story if you'd like. I don't want to take away from what we're talking about with the schizophrenia and stuff.
That's fine. We can go off and come back. Yeah.
Okay. I had, after having 2 people that didn't come back, one guy didn't even come back for his tools or to be paid. But the third one was a friend of mine's cousin who I worked with her. She and I were nurses together in the same facility. And he came to put in wooden flooring. I needed wooden flooring put in. I had purchased the house in March and I wasn't going to move in until the summer because my kids had 8 more weeks of school to finish and I didn't want to change it and transfer them. I made the 30-minute commute to and from so that they could finish out their school year with their friends and then start in the new school fresh after the summer. And so I had workers coming in to do renovations. And the third one, he and I were there together. I was in the hallway painting and he was in the room just on the opposite side of the wall of me putting in the wooden flooring, tongue and groove flooring. And I turn and I see this young man coming up the stairs. The house was a split level. So you had a double entry door and a foyer that you would come into. And then you had descending stairs and ascending stairs that would go up or go down. And we were up on the upper level, which is where the living room and the bedrooms and kitchen and stuff were. Downstairs was a large family room, huge garage, and a nice big bonus room down there that you could use for whatever you wanted. So anyway, I see this young man coming up to the top of the stairs. And he was so real. I mean, he had brown parted down the middle, kind of 80s style, feathered back hair, a white Oxford shirt, jeans, penny loafers, no socks. And he had, looked like he had really bad acne, like ruddy, darker complexion to his cheeks. And he was so real that I turned and I said, did you knock? Because I thought it was some disoriented person that just walked in, or that they knocked and I didn't hear them knock, and the house had sold so fast. I mean, it wasn't even on the MLS, but for one day, because there's a story with that too. But anyway, then when I looked at him directly, I could see the waffling to the air. The way that I see spirits is out of my peripheral vision. I can see them as plain as I can see you. I can tell you their eye color, what they have on. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. I've only had one show up naked, but that's another story too. Nobody wants to see mom naked if they're getting ready to cross over. So, mom, please put some clothes on. But anyway, when I look at them directly, if they're at a distance, it's like looking at a plate glass window where you can see your own reflection that's kind of opaque. So they're kind of opaque when I see them. When they're closer, I see energetic waffling to the air like gas fumes or hot vapors coming off of a road, that kind of waffling appearance. And I could see the waffling appearance. So I knew that he was still there. And I thought, oh, okay, we have a ghost in the house. That's what's been turning on and off the lights and the water and, and opening the cabinets and slamming the doors and doing all of these things that were happening in the house. So that day I left to go pick up my kids at around 2 o'clock. And I'm sitting in the car line at the school waiting to pick them up. And I get a call from Bobby, who's putting down the flooring in my son's room. And he says, I have to leave. I have to leave right now. There's something about this house that I've never experienced. And the line dropped. So I'm calling him for almost an hour. I finally get a hold of him. And I said, well, what happened? I've got furniture getting ready to come in there. I need the floor to be done. Everything's lined up. I've now sold the place that I was living in, so I've got a certain amount of days to get out and that sort of thing. And he said, oh, it was nothing, but I'd rather be there when you're there. So he ended up never coming back. And I ended up asking my friend at work, I said, next time you see Bobby, would you please ask him, what happened? I have a feeling it was something paranormal. And she said, okay. So July came, and in America we have our 4th of July holiday, and he was at my friend's house, and he was drinking, and he was feeling a little talkative. And she asked him, she said, what happened, at Lynn's house that you didn't, stay and finish? And he said, oh my gosh, he said, I feel so bad. He said, Lynn is such a nice lady, but that house is words that I probably can't say on the radio because it's an F-bomb, and that it's effed up, is what he said. And that he said that when he was in the room doing the tongue and groove flooring, he had a trowel and a block and a mallet to kind of tap in the tongue and groove flooring with the block of wood. And he had just put a piece of flooring down, and he went to reach for his mallet and his block of wood to tap it in, and they were gone. And he was on this like a garden seat with wheels that would wheel back and forth because he couldn't be down on his knees. So he thought maybe he rolled over him. So he scoots over and they're not there. And then he turns to look right where the bedroom door was, about 7 feet away. And there were his tools lined up right in front of the door, paralleling each other. And he's like, it kind of freaked him out. But he got up and he just assumed that I had returned and that I snuck in. I was playing a joke on him. He thought that I had walked in quietly and picked up the tools and put them there and walked out. So he got up and he picked up the tools and he starts calling for me in the hallway. And of course, I'm not there. So he, he's kind of spooked at this point. So he turns he had a battery operated radio, one of those boom boxes. And he also turned the lights on because the sun had now gone to the opposite side of the house. And he said no sooner than he sat down and started to put more adhesive onto another piece of the flooring, the light turned itself off, and then the radio turned itself off, and he could hear his tools dragging behind him, and he's watching them line up by the door. And he said that he couldn't get out of there fast enough. So the fourth guy stayed because he was stoned all the time, and he carried his own Archon in his back, so he was okay. He was not bothered by them at all because they already had him. And he did good work.
So what were these then? Were these entities, ghosts? What do you think they were?
There were 2 demons. They were identified. I had a paranormal group come up from Georgia that got pictures, the infrared cameras, the recordings, all of that. They identified one as a hell dog. The other one was identified as like a second level demon. Like they have gargoyles and they have cherubim, and they're, the first one's going in the opposite direction, then they go in the opposite direction. And one of them was a young man that had hung himself in the house, which was the young man that I saw coming to the top of the stairs.
And Lynn, what is a hell dog?
A hell dog is a dog that protects ferociously whatever space that it is placed on, and it usually protects something that is evil, that is buried. They work for Satan. They're nasty. They're
Guardians
really, really
of
nasty.
gateways. I'm just looking at it here. It says they're guardians of gateways.
Yes, they're
associated
guardians.
with omens of death, possession, or malevolent entities, known to emit sulfuric smells, disappear without trace, or move silently. It's from Greek mythology as well. Sometimes Cerberus. the Greek, the three-headed hellhound. Yeah, black British folklore, black shuck, barguest, and padfoot are ghostly black dogs believed to appear before death or disaster. Okay.
Right. And they
Mm.
also, in the case of him, what when I had, and I mean, I'm all over the place with this. There are details to go with it. When the lady came, it was the Native American. She came in through the back of the house because she knew that they were waiting for her at the front door of the double entry doors after she removed that entity off of my daughter. I had my daughter go sit in the car,
Oh,
you know,
sorry,
with the
which woman
windows
is
down.
this? Is this the paranormal team that you invited from Georgia?
Nope,
Oh,
nope. They're
sorry.
the ones that got pictures of everything.
Right.
So it's kind of confusing unless I kind of start from the beginning. Let's see here. I did have a Georgia Paranormal group come along with a Presbyterian minister that was the minister of my church that I reached out to. That I had dated him like 2 years before. I was single, and I had, you know, when you're in that kind of a situation, you have to reach out to people that knew you before, so they don't think you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I contacted him, and his church actually told me that when he brought it up to the church, that he was more afraid of the Bible thumpers than he was of the things in the house that I had just bought. And he had made mention that he was going to take funds from the church to pay the paranormal group that I had found to come up from Georgia, which came up with the infrared cameras and all of that sort of thing. Once they thought that they had cleared them out, they didn't. They didn't clear them out. What had happened is I had gone back after they told me that everything was okay to go back, because I had even stopped taking my children. My son one night spent the night in the house before I had all of this done, and he woke up with bite marks on his legs. He had taken a bath that night. He was like 7 years old, 8 years old. He had taken a bath and he had on shorts and a shirt of Power Rangers or whatever it was that was popular at that time, that he was wearing his character pajamas. And I would have seen the bites on him. And he slept in the house. And that was the night that I saw the hell dog for the first time, coming up from the lower levels, crossing the front entry doors and shooting down the hallway in front of me. And I had my dog with us that would not come into the house, but I had to carry her in. And I hear her growling down the hallway where that thing headed, ferociously. So I go down to see what she's growling at. And she's standing in the doorway of the bedroom with her hair raised on her back, just fixated on that door. And I kind of pet her to calm her down, and she put her ears back for a minute, but then she was still fixated on that door. So other things happened. Finally, I laid down and went to sleep. I'm trying to rationalize it. You know, I haven't had anything to eat. My blood sugar's low. I've been painting with fumes. I could be seeing things myself. Maybe it was a motorcycle going under a street light outside, since not all of the windows were covered. But there's nothing that could have had it come up and go across and then come up and shoot down. So the next morning when we woke up, I asked my daughter how she slept, and she said, I didn't. She said, I felt like something was standing in the doorway staring at me all night long. And then when my son woke up, he had 3 sets of bite marks on his legs. He had 2 on one leg and 1 on the other, 2 on the thighs and 1 on the lower leg just past his knee. Literally like dog bite marks. You could count the teeth. They were purple. They didn't break the skin, but you could literally count the teeth. Now, I had a Schnauzer dog with me. She wasn't bite prone type thing. And the mouth was smaller than hers, but bigger than a rat's. You know what I'm saying? And again, this house was new to me. I didn't know if it had, you know, rodent problems or anything. I was just learning about the house myself. So when my son woke up, I pointed them out and I said, Austin, I said, what happened? What happened to your legs? And he's looking down and he's touching them. And he's like, I don't know. Well, if something had bitten you hard enough to leave those marks, you would have felt it. But they do this kind of energetic thing where I'm sure you've heard people talking about that they've had moments where they were laying pinned by something and could only move their eyeballs. I mean, they can do that kind of thing or make you sleep through something. So those bites occurred during that night, and it was that thing in the doorway that had bit him. So after that happened, I didn't take my kids back to the house anymore until I had gotten groups, multiple groups. I think I had 13 different denominations come through there, all of them professing that they could get it out, and they didn't. I mean, I thought the Catholic priest that I had come there was going to wet his pants. He was shaking so bad, he was adding to the problem because he was so frightened they were feeding off of his loosh in there. So anyway,
Who are you going to call, eh? That's the movie
yeah,
goes.
exactly. And people, I mean, that was even back, like, I mean, and the house wasn't old either. The house was built in the 1970s. So what I did learn is it's not about the age of the house. A brand new house can be haunted if it's built in the wrong place. It's about the age of the ground that it's built on and what was there. So come to find out from one of the ladies that had come, the lady that had come that was the American Indian that came through the back door, the wolf presented itself at the top of the stairs, and it would make this sound like a didgeridoo. It had this electronic wah, wah, wah kind of buzzing sound when it would communicate with people. And so she would ask it a question, and you'd hear this whoa, 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 the buzzing, gurgling kind of sound. And then she'd ask it something else. So she was communicating with it. And when it came to the top of the stairs, she said to me, well, you did say it had big feet, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, why is it so ugly? She says, well, it's not ugly where it comes from, type thing. And she was communicating, and the guy was standing right next to me, and he's like, whoa. I mean, he saw, all three of us saw it present at the top of the stairs where she was just sitting off to the side, trying to talk to it. And it had made mention that it was there to guard. It was a guardian, that it was on the property guarding something. And it turned out that there were ley lines underneath the house, that the house, when it was built, clipped into the ley lines. She told me that if the house had been built just 3 feet over, it wouldn't be haunted, because those things were coming in up through a fireplace that I had in the lower level and was using that. And so she tried to, of course, clear it out as well. But after having, in between her and having the Episcopalian priest and the Presbyterian minister there at the same time, I had gone back with my children just for a day. I needed to mow the grass, and my son brought a friend with him. They were climbing in the tree. And when I'm in the garage putting gasoline in the lawnmower, my son's friend comes through the front door, comes down the stairs to the garage, and he's wincing and he's holding his neck to the side. And, you could tell that it really hurt him. And I said, what happened? Did Austin hit you with a stick? What's the matter? And I moved his hand away. There was nothing there. And he says, I don't know. I just got to the bottom of the stairs and it just hit me. And then he started to retch, which was a telltale sign in this house that you were under spiritual attack. The vomiting, you wouldn't actually vomit, but you would retch so hard that you could hardly breathe when they would attack you. So I ushered him to the car. I knew what it was when he started retching. I'm like, those things are still here. And I called to my children. I said, go to the car. We're leaving. Do not come in the house. If you're in the house, do not come down the stairs to the lower level. So my son races to the car. My daughter didn't hear me, so she comes down the stairs to the lower level. And as soon as she gets to that bottom stair, she goes, ah, and she starts grabbing her ankle, and she cannot bear weight. She said, I didn't twist my ankle. I don't know what's wrong. And she's like down on, crawling on all fours and trying to, pick up her ankle because it's burning so bad. When they strike you, it's a burning feeling that goes to the bone, and it hurts really, really bad. I was attacked during one of the clearings. I was attacked during the clearing with the Presbyterian minister and the Episcopalian priest in there. So I know that. And when they put the cross over where I was hit, it immediately stopped. And they said for them to leave me alone. So it was, again, an energetic thing, but it can be very hot and very painful when they do it. So I helped my daughter get to the car because she couldn't bear weight. And I closed up the garage and I got in the car and we left. And as we kind of got down a couple of blocks, everybody started to feel better. But I called up the Episcopalian priest when I got home and I said, there is no way that I'm going to move my family into that house. I said, those things are not gone. They attacked my children and they're my children's friend today. I said, so I'm going to sell it. And he's like, no, 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 don't sell it. That's your property. You need to keep that house. He said, you need to command them to leave in the name of Jesus Christ. And I said, look, your house is supposed to be your haven. Every single time a window's open and a piece of paper blows off, I'm going to be up screaming, you know, I command you to leave in the name of Jesus Christ, even if it just got blown off by a breeze. I will never be able to relax in that home. I said, and not only that, if I have family over, let's say for Thanksgiving dinner, and I see a demon walk through the house and I stand up while everybody's sitting there and start screaming for it to get out in the name of Jesus Christ, how long do you think my guests are going to stay?
Hey,
You
Lynn,
know, and
how often do you think regular people are attacked by these things out of the clear blue?
oh, a lot.
That's what I thought.
A lot. And they're very active right now because of the frequency changes that are elevating. They are baiting people right now, really, really bad.
Yeah, and it's
Really, really bad.
always negative stuff.
Yes.
And
And they will pretend to be something.
well, they'll pretend to be your thoughts.
Yes.
That's what's so dangerous about them. They sound just like your thoughts in most cases.
They do. You know, some of them show up physically to the people that can see them. My son was at a place recently, and my mother has passed away. My entire family's gone except for me, and of course, I have my children. Out of six of us, my mother, father, two sisters, and brother are all on the other side. But my mother kind of is a guardian angel over my son, and my son feels her and actually sees her sometimes. And he said that it was like 3 o'clock in the morning and something was bumping his bed. And he woke up, and my mother was standing there with three other spiritual beings next to the bed. And he's like, Grandma, I got to get up for work in 3 hours. Why are you here now? Come back later. And she just smiled again. And he's like, no, really, you need to go because I have to sleep. This isn't a good time. And when she turned, he said she had a reptilian tail coming out from behind her. So it wasn't my mother's spirit. They're mimicking people that are familiar. And these are these reptilian things, these demonic things, all of the things that that were mentioned,
Yeah.
that are
That's why it's
active
so
on Earth.
dangerous for people to play with Ouija boards
Oh, yeah.
and channel things because they have no idea what they're speaking to or what they're channeling. And I've spoken to several patients who were playing with a Ouija board and they were communicating with this thing. And then after a while, it would appear in their heads. So they would start hearing voices just like the schizophrenics. And they were just as crazy as any of the schizophrenics after that.
Yeah, even with me, sometimes when things approach, because I still see things, walking through every once in a while, or people call me for help and I'm in their house trying to clear things out. But sometimes even with myself and some people that I know that have gifts as well, we've all said that we have to verify that the spirit that's there is who it really is, and I do that simply by sending them a love light from my heart chakra. And if it's someone like your mother or somebody that has passed away and is just coming back to check in on you and visit for a minute, they will relish in the love coming from you. If it's anything lower level or dark that's even trying to appear like a person that's familiar, because something about the invitation, they have to be invited in order to stay.
Like a vampire.
Exactly.
Like a vampire, they have to get invited into the home. Yeah.
Exactly. So they'll
you.
come in and they'll try to look like someone familiar, or they'll come in as a child. And everybody say, oh, it's just a little child ghost. It's innocent. It's nothing. No, it may not be a real child. You don't know. It could be something posing. So, yeah, because demons and lower level things cannot stand any of the positive emotions that I had mentioned before, of love, of gratitude, of joy, of laughter, and any of those sorts of things like that, they can't stand it. It's like a stench in the room with them. It's like repellent. So when you
were talking about a love light, I mean,
yeah,
how do you go about doing that? That's nothing like romantic love, right?
no, it's very pure and it's energetic. Your heart chakra lets out a pink light, and you can just envision heart-shaped light coming out, and you can be saying in your head, love, 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 or you can do it out loud, love, 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 love. and send it in the direction of the spirit. Send it in. It even helps with people that are having arguments that are in physical body. You can send that person that love light energy and it kind of diffuses things. It really works. But with spirits, if they're negative spirits, they can't stand to be around it. They can't get out of the room fast enough because it's like a bad stench in the room for them. And that's
the same thing.
Yep. And that's how you can determine whether it is a loved one that is genuinely come to visit, or if it is something posing as a loved one that wants the invitation so that they can stay here and create havoc.
What you beam the
And you've
love
got
at you beam the love at it, and if it holds the love, you know it's genuine. If it gets burnt out like a kind of a wasp in in the sunlight, you know it's an
abs
entity, a negative entity, right? Yeah.
yes, they can't stand it. And that does not apply to like elementals and fae, because they were here before the time of religion and they relish in love and things too. And I just want to mention this really quick. I know I was talking about fairies and some people think that that's woo woo, but like I said, I have pictures. Um, they've been demonetized also by the Christian religion because their leader was Lucifer when Lucifer was God's favorite and the intelligent angel of music, and then he took things in his own hands and got kicked out. And like the Hatfields and the McCoys or the Republicans and the Democrats, they follow their team without question. And now they're kind of questioning and coming back. But they have emotions just like we do as humans. They have the ability to love. They grieve loss. They have joy. They have anger. They have all of that. And demons can't do that. They can't experience love. They can't have joy. Laughter to them is again a repellent. Anything, even if you don't do the love, love, love thing, just start saying out, oh, I'm so happy today. I just love life. Isn't it beautiful? Everything's so wonderful. Make it to the point that anybody would gag on their spoon in a room if they're with you, that you're being so overly positive and so overly loving. They can't stand it. They cannot stand it.
Love it. Yeah. Can I just ask, just going back to the house again, the haunted house, just to kind of complete the loop on that a little bit. So did you say that the hellhound was eradicated? And then also when you said they, like they striking the leg, striking the shoulder, like what was what was that, the haunted man that hanged himself, or who, what was that?
No, it was the hell dog. It was the day that the day that Bobby left early, the guy that was my friend's cousin.
Yeah.
I had to go back to the house because he'd left the windows opened. And I was working that weekend, and this was a Friday. I was working that weekend, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to be back until Monday to do anything with the house. So I asked my next door neighbor, Ellen, to come with me to the house, because on the upper level, there was an air conditioner in one of the windows that we had running to pull some moisture out of the house where the flooring was drying. And I needed to pull it inside the window so that I could close the window. The windows were not the up and down kind. They were the kind that would open like this with a crank. They were the older windows. So there was this area above it with no screen that was wide open for the elements and bugs to come in. So she agreed to go with me. And I was kind of explaining to her, because that was the day that I saw the young man coming up to the spirit of the young man who had hung himself coming up to the stairs. And he was verified actually by more than one person. The neighbor verified him, what he looked like and who he was. And my daughter saw him, and we compared notes, and we were both accurate. So anyway, that was the day that I saw him. So I was telling my friend Ellen, I said, listen, I think that there's a ghost in this house. There've been some weird things happening. The lights have been turning, the locks have been unlocking themselves. The door was a key piece because it was controlled by that hell dog, and I didn't realize it at that time. So I just thought that it was a ghost. And I said, so if we get there and you're not comfortable coming in with me, it was dark outside. I didn't want to go back by myself. It was dark. And I said, then you don't have to come in with me. I'll see if the neighbor across the street's husband will help me pull in the air conditioner. She says, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm not, ghosts don't bother me. And I said, okay, type thing. I'm like, do you believe in ghosts? Hell yeah. And I said, okay. So we got there. When we went to go in, I was having trouble with getting my key out of the lock, which was a common problem with that house. And my friend walked into the foyer and she made a joke. she said, "Oh, you're not going to leave me here and let the boogeyman get me, are you?" Well, you don't want to mock them because they have an intelligence about them, and they targeted her. So we went into the house, we pulled in the air conditioner, closed the window, and we went into the kitchen. And I had just gotten these hand carved wooden horse heads from my daughter's bedroom. She wanted a horse theme in her room. So I had these beautiful Morgan horse heads to drape curtains over in her room. And Ellen was holding one in each hand facing the counter. I'm standing right next to her. I hear this didgeridoo sound that I had heard once before. And I didn't say anything because I thought that I was the only one hearing it. And when I turn, I can see this ectoplasmic wall from floor to ceiling that was kind of moving in on us. And all of a sudden, my friend Ellen starts screaming, and she said, oh my God, what is it? A spider bite? And she's grabbing her shirt, trying to twist it around to see if there's a hole or a bug on it that's biting through her fabric. Now, Ellen was a plus size lady. So she was so heavy that her arms, she couldn't reach to even fasten her bra strap because she was larger. So her boyfriend would have to help her do that in the mornings. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because when I lifted up her shirt and back, she had a 4.5-inch claw mark between her shoulder blades underneath her bra strap that was just starting to welt and bead blood. As a medical professional and a wound care expert, I guess I could say I'm licensed in that, also wound care. The initial response of a wound like a scratch, you'll have that welting effect before it starts to bleed. But even after a wound has gotten a scab, if you pick the scab off, that welting thing never happens again. So because it was welting and just starting to bead blood, it looked like chigger bites, but it looked like a cat scratch, just a single one. I knew that it was a fresh wound. And I asked her, I said, what happened? Did you scratch yourself? I mean, there was no furniture even in the house yet, I'm like, did you scratch yourself on the corner of the car door or something? And then she starts screaming again. And it's gotten her on the front, on her stomach, below her, just off to the left side, below her belly button, about a 2.5-inch mark. And I'm like, we need to leave right now. You go first. I wanted to go behind her so that I could lock some doors and make sure that they were locked because they weren't attacking me. I started screaming out every name that you could name God. I called for Mother Mary, Jesus, Jehovah, Yahweh, Yeshua, Buddha, Allah, you name it. I was yelling for everybody. And that wall started to push back, but it still was hovering in the doorway of the breakfast nook of this kitchen. And we left. And I mean, I didn't care how well I had locked up the house at that point. I figured if anybody wanted to break in, that house could take care of itself, but we left and got out of there. As we were driving down the road, because it was dark, I could see this luminescent thing, which was an archon, that was kind of hanging on her front like a halter top almost, but the head was bobbing back like a baby with no neck, with that thin thing on it. So I could see that on her. And she says, gosh, these things burn. They burn really, really bad. But they actually broke her skin. But they do have, and like I said, they do have an intelligence about
Oh,
them.
so that was an Archon, Lynn. I thought that was the Hellhound.
No, the hellhound did the claw marks, but
Right.
it left her with an attachment on her when she went to leave.
Right. Okay.
All
that
of
was
that combined.
and that was an Archon. That wasn't something from the house. That came from a different maybe dimension, did it?
I don't know, but it was on her when we left, and it was to the
Right.
front of her. But that hell dog is what caused those claw marks.
Right.
And do you find that these things are attracted to people who are traumatized?
Oh yeah, because they're easy prey. Their art fields are thin, and they've got gaps.
Yep, and that's what we find with schizophrenics. They're virtually all of them have severe sexual, physical, or emotional trauma, and these things. It's almost like they can smell that trauma, right?
Yes, they can. Mm-hmm. They can see it. Because they can see the energy field that the embodied people can't see for the most part. The medical field surely can't see it, and that's why it goes untreated. They can see your energy field, and they can see where you even if you've had surgery recently, it's really important to seal those areas on your art field with salt baths or something to make sure that that is closed, because it'll be a target that they look for that in order to be able to attach to create chaos in your life.
And
So
that's where MACE comes in and getting rid of that trauma. I've had some patients who we got rid of that trauma and the voice would disappear with it. And some where the voice would get weaker after, and some where the voices would interfere with the process to the point that we couldn't do a MACE method with them because the voices got so strong that they could not concentrate.
the voice gets weaker because the triggers are gone that trigger them, and they don't create the chaos in the loosh. The triggers don't make the loosh, the person react in a way that the loosh is
Ease
created.
off.
And the loosh is their chocolate. That's their candy.
Yeah.
You
You're
know,
removing the chocolate basically by doing some of this trauma cleansing work. Yeah.
yes.
They hit us all. They're just, it's almost like they're testing to see what kind of reaction they'll get from different people. And
Oh, they know me by name.
they don't like me.
Yeah, they don't like. Yeah, they know you by name too. That's why.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all
So,
I'm sure we're all on their radar for the work we do, I'm sure we're on like a hit list.
absolutely.
They've got like a little office and they've got like a like kind of in a detective's office and they go, that's the kind of number one, public enemy number one.
And I think there's something to that because one day I was coming to work at I was doing psych crisis in one of the emergency rooms in a big hospital here in Tucson. And there was this girl laying in the bed. She was in the psychiatrics. I never saw her before. I didn't talk to her. I went in and, started up my computer and got my assignments for the night. And she was one of the ones that I was supposed to see, to evaluate that night. When I was talking to her, she said, when you walked in that door, the voices said, stay away from him. He's dangerous. She told me that. And I'm like, that is interesting.
I had one actually start hissing at me one time when yeah. And I mean, it was somebody face to face and they just, I tell people, there's some things that I will do to help people and some things that I won't, and demons are not one of them. I can do them, but I won't do them. But with this mace, I don't have to as much because they do it themselves once those ridges are removed and those opportunities for attachment and that, like I said, loose creation for them to feed off of is gone. So I don't have to go pulling them off of people, literally manually pulling them off of people like I did before, because that put me in danger. I actually had an attachment attached to me with one of them that was not fun to get off.
So Lynn, let's say you're walking around town, do you actually see these attached onto people randomly, like in your supermarket or something, or do you have to be in a certain environment to see these and in a certain frame of mind?
Well, yes, I can see them. Sometimes I choose not to. I mean, I kind of go what I call look. I don't know how else to describe this. When sometimes I see them when I don't want to because they're just there. Otherwise, if somebody says, will you go and look, then I can purposely look and go into a different frame of mind that I can start looking for things. But I mean, there are many, many times that I'll be walking past somebody in a grocery store and I'll see a wiggly leg of a spider that's on their archon in the back. And I'll be like, woo, that 6 foot spacing from leftover from COVID is a good thing. You want to stand back from somebody like that. But I was going around purposely. Once I saw the woman with the attachments on her back in the facility, and I started purposely looking. And I would even ask my other fellow student nurses at that time, by chance, does your client have schizophrenia? Yeah. How'd you know? By chance, there was only one time that I got it wrong. And that was because this person was both an alcoholic and drug addict, plus they were hearing voices. So they were a combo deal. And that was the only one that I got wrong because I couldn't see the archon clearly because of the attachments that were bubbling out over the top of it, if that makes sense.
They're the roughest ones to deal with because they got the alcoholic spirits, which are dead alcoholics that are getting drunk.
That too, yeah.
By jumping into them and getting high. So when you're drinking, you're not the only one drinking, especially with alcoholics. There's a whole crowd getting high off of your drinking. And that's why they said one drink is not enough or too many. It's like, they want more. So
Smoking, porno, all of it, all of it, all of it.
I just did an
You-
episode actually about how pornography has been encrypted with satanic spells. So when you're,
Mhm.
engaging in porn, you're actually allowing these demonic entities to kind of open up and come through. That's the point.
Yes.
Janice Bartello did a whole episode on that with me. So yeah, it's just pervasive, isn't it? And so would you say then that you see these in like high definition on people, or would you say it's more of a kind of an ethereal wisp around this person that you might see with your eyes or with
It's
your third eye in the periphery, or how does it work?
it's when it's in the periphery, I can see them as clear as I see you.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it's more of an etherical, wispy kind of look.
yeah,
Like if I'm close up to them and I'm looking for something, it's kind of like a fogging almost, and you can see a movement. Sometimes they have a little bit of color to them. Usually they're more of a gray, but yeah, no, it's hard. It's almost like a light energy almost too. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to explain it in human words. I don't know
yeah.
how. I mean, there are just some things you can't describe in human words,
No,
like
exactly.
like the colors that I've seen in heaven when the people have crossed over and I've been able to peek in. You can't describe those color. There are no human words for it. So,
what was it like when you were working with people passing over in the critical care part? What do they call them? Places where people go to die. What was what
oh,
was what was that like?
I loved doing that because I love old people. And I like being able to connect with my clients and build a rapport. But I mean, there were things walking around there all of the time in there. But most of it, the thing that I felt bad about is the way that the people were treated by the medical community. Everything was run and get a pill. They weren't trying to treat the problem, they were trying to negate the problem and make it quiet. They like you had mentioned, Jerry, they really don't have an accurate test to prove certain brain chemicals and functions. They don't have the ability to really prove what causes schizophrenia. They think they do, but they don't really have like a set pattern of tests. It's if you're hearing voices, you got schizophrenia. No,
Right.
you might be an empath and you might be hearing spirits talking to you, which doesn't necessarily make you, a weirdo. It just might make you your frequencies running a little bit higher energetic frequency is. But the thing is that I had multiple things occur. I love sharing the story about Edna the blind lady. If you'd like me to share that one, Jerry's heard it a couple of times, but it's a great story.
Yeah,
Go
I'd love
ahead.
to. Yeah, please.
Okay. Edna was on my unit. She'd only been there for about 2 weeks, so I didn't know her that well. She had been blind for 10 years, totally blind, no shadows, no anything. She couldn't see speckles or anything. And she was in that active stage of decline where she was transitioning, where loved ones do start to come in. I want to say this to people, even if there's not a physical family member or person present in the room at the time that someone passes, I promise you that they never pass alone. So if anybody has guilt that their mom passed alone during the night in their sleep and they weren't there, they did not pass alone. And it's not the last time you're going to see them. We don't die. We shed our bodies, their meat suits, and we go on. You will see your pets and everybody again. I promise you that. So if you could kind of change your mind of seeing death as a sadness and maybe more of a celebration because they get to go home and you're stuck here, but eventually you'll catch up with them. So anyway, Edna, her son and daughter come to the nurse's station and they say to me, Mom's talking to people in the room that aren't there. Well, I expected that because she was in that stage, and to comfort them more so than worrying about her, I said to them, I said, well, let me walk back with you to your mama's room and see if she's comfortable, if I can do anything to make her more comfortable. And we walked into the room. Edna was sitting at a slant, which they usually are to help them breathe. And she's reaching up into the air like she's being handed something very delicate, like a snowflake, or just something that she's being very, very careful with, and she's smiling. She's very happy with whatever it is that she's receiving. And I said to her, I said, Edna, who's here? And she says, George. Her daughter turned as white as a sheet, and she had to sit down, and she said, well, George is my father, and my father passed away X amount of years ago. And the thing that was really cool is then Edna pipes up and she says, and he's glad that you're taking good care of Pixie. The son had to relay the story to me about how when George passed away, the son had to take possession of Pixie the poodle, Edna's dog, because Edna, being blind, could no longer care for the dog. He still had possession of the dog, which was now an elderly dog, but still very much alive. And he said to me, he said, do you think my mother is hallucinating? Well, I knew she wasn't hallucinating, but in a professional setting, I couldn't come out and say, no, I don't think your mom's hallucinating. I think your dad's here. And so I had to turn it around. And I said, well, do you think she's hallucinating? And he's like, well, I don't know. And I said, listen, I'm not trying to change your belief system, but it's been my experience that loved ones in the spirit realms do come forward to collect their loved ones and help them transition over so they don't have to basically walk home alone type thing. And I said, do you mind if I try something? And he said, okay. And I asked Edna, I said, Edna, can I ask George a question? And she nodded her head, yes. And I said, George, what color is your son's shirt? And Edna said, yellow. He was wearing a yellow Ralph Lauren polo shirt. The only way that she could have known, being totally blind, what color her son's shirt was is because George told her what color it was. Now, when they get in that transition period, the filters efface so they can hear the telepathic communication from the spirit realms and the other dimensions, the same as they can hear the physically embodied people's physical speech. So she can, people, if they could realize that during this time when they're all grieving and the person's, getting ready to transition and pass, that they can actually talk through that person to people that are on the other side. They can ask Uncle Bob what he did with the clock and actually get an answer through that person that's transitioning if Uncle Bob is present in the room at that time. If he's not, you can ask for somebody to go get him, and they'll go get him, type thing, unless he's doing something. They are very busy on the other side. They have things to do. But I've been there with the beautiful receptions of the loved ones that come in. They have beautiful receptions for people. Of course, there are three kinds of death. There's a natural death, which we most all have. There are sudden deaths. There's also near-death experiences, and every single one is handled differently. But in the natural death, where they're prepared, they have this beautiful reception prepared for the loved ones to come through, and you get to have a reception with your pets too. So don't be surprised if you're expecting a German Shepherd that an albino elephant comes up to give you a hug, because that might have been something that you had in a previous life because your pets are there. So you might get the German Shepherd too.
Why would they just be waiting in the astral world or in that realm, whatever you want to call it, and not moving on to another life or going into heaven or whatever? Why are they just in that kind of halfway home, waiting for people that they've been living with, their family members, to die? Like,
what has been explained to me is that when they're out of body, that they can be in 6 places simultaneously. So only a portion of them is there waiting for the person, for the person's comfort, the person's passing's comfort, and to also greet them. But another part of them is off. What I've been told through I'm in communication with my mother on the other side too, is that there are people that incarnate and people that reincarnate. The people that reincarnate end up, when they leave their body, going into a school type setting. They go and they do their life review, which is like a panoramic thing that they do. And God does not judge people. You're usually there with a familiar being or someone that will become familiar to you, because you would remember from when you came here that you knew that person before, and you judge yourself. And really, if you think about it, that is more effective, because if you're having somebody point out your faults, it's easy to rationalize and say, well, yeah, I did poke his eye out, make him blind, but he spit at me first. Instead, you're placed in a position where you actually feel the trauma of what you did and the rippling effect that it caused in the person's life, so that you actually have to own your behavior, which is more effective. You judge yourself. From there, those people that have reincarnated go into more like a class type setting where they can work through some of the things that they made mistakes on, and then they are presented to come back here. The incarnates go through the same panoramic life review. They also get to spend some time in the Akashic or Akashic records, however you want to pronounce that. They talk about this hallway with cubbies, and the cubbies, some of the cubbies have like filters over them. And when my mom had asked once what those were, they said that was opportunities that you missed. So some of the cubbies are open and some of them are still covered. So then from there, they kind of go through a, not decompression, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, for instance, when somebody's been in the army, they not declassify, they
Decompress.
Decompress. You know what I mean? They kind of, why can't I think of that word?
Explain it and I'll try and come up with a word.
It's where they desensitize you to the trauma that you've been through here, if that makes sense. You know, like, yeah, you know, like, for instance, if you've been a person that's worked for the CIA and you've seen all of these horrible things and you've just come back from Iraq, that you have to go through this desensitizing thing, or debriefing, like a debriefing.
Okay.
That's close as I. Yeah. So they kind of go through like what we would consider a debriefing. And then from there, they can choose to stay in that plane of what we call heaven or the other side. They do actually have houses there, really, really cool walls that are kind of opalescent. The light actually emits from within the atmosphere itself, but the walls are more opalescent with no seams. They have kind of similar furniture, or you can choose to go somewhere else, and heaven turns into like an airport, and people are going down terminals to different galaxies and different, you know, universes for that matter. They don't have to stay there. But the thing is they do everything by thought. So if they think of a place that they want to be, they instantaneously go there with that thought. My mother told me, I had asked her, I said, Mom, you know, don't you ever miss the taste of brownies or the potato salad that you used to make, or the barbecued ribs that you would make and enjoyed eating? And she's like, well, we don't eat here. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know. She said, but we do everything with thought. So if we want to experience a flavor of something from anywhere in the universe, she said, all we have to do is think about it, and the flavor and the sensation of it comes to us as if we are eating it. And of course, I always like to say, you know, wow, wouldn't that be great with Ben and Jerry's ice cream? You could eat as much as you want and not have the calories. So people also question, oh, well, once you cross over, you can't eat anymore. Yes, you can, but it's not a swallowing thing. It's just the pleasure part of enjoying the food, of the flavor type thing, because you don't need to swallow it, but everything is done by memory and thought.
Can I say, because I've spoken to people and they talk about the soul trap, and they say what happens is when you die, you're encouraged to go towards the white light. And it's actually a soul trap where your people that you know, family members that have died, are kind of luring you in, but they're not actually really your family members. And you go through the white light, and then you get you get reincarnated back in, and it trick you into the life review. And you think, oh no, I've messed up my life. I need to go back. And it's just a way to kind of wipe your memory, do the memory wipe, and then put you back in. Is that something you've heard?
Yeah, that can happen also. I've heard of people that have had near-death experiences that have gone a little bit more of the lower levels than the higher levels, where actually it's almost like their family members that they want to engage with are like behind a glass window, and they can't speak to them or touch them or anything, and they're kind of going into the darker levels. And a lot of times, then of course they come back out of that with the near-death experience they've talked about. But it can happen that way too. I'm talking about the ideal way, you know, that most of the time that people have. But, you know, there are even periods of time that there are people like Hitler, for instance, that are cocooned for a while. You know, they kind of just freeze them in place because they have to try to recondition them for that matter. And if they can't, then they'll just be absorbed. I mean, you know, there's just some things that you can't change completely. Now, there are a lot of things that are very, very traumatic that people have done on this earth that they volunteered to do for other people's lessons. So, it's hard to understand it until you're there, type thing, because of the way, because then you can see everything and you can see all of the ways that it plays out. I mean, there's also this quantum, this other thing too, where when your soul starts to come down to earth, it splits, kind of like a pool table with the balls in the triangle, and you've got the white ball. You take it off, and when you hit the white ball, the balls in the triangle scatter.
Yeah.
And that our life light is kind of like that it splatters and actually lends in all different universes and places. So there are paralleling lives, and those paralleling lives sometimes, filter through one another. For instance, if you're having a dream that's realistic, man, I was a fighter pilot and I was flying and I was chasing these bad people. Well, it might very well be because that's what you're doing somewhere else. And that's why it seems so real. So there's a whole concept about that as well. There's a lot of deep stuff here that would take a while to explain. This is
Yeah.
just the tip of the
Tip of the
iceberg.
iceberg. It's incredible. It's fascinating.
And,
I mean,
and,
like,
and with
so
the,
how old are people then when they go up there? Like, is it the age that they die? They stay that age when they, like, how do they look? How do they appear?
No, the median age is 35. However, when there is a person in physical form that's actively passing, or if your loved ones come back to visit you or to retrieve you at your time to pass, they come back looking as the way that you remember seeing them last. Not, however, in a healthy way. So, like if somebody has died of cancer and they've lost 200 pounds and they're 50 pounds when they pass and they look like a raisin, just shriveled, they're not going to present to you in that way. They will present to you in the way that you saw them last, healthy, but it'll be a way that you recognize. Sometimes babies that pass at that baby age will show up as more of a toddler, but you would still recognize the child because of their energy. You would connect with that and you would know, and plus their appearance, you would kind of remember them and, oh, look at you now,
So what about
type
yourself
thing.
when you die? Like, what, and you're able to see yourself in a reflection when you die? Like, how old would we be?
Um, oh, that's funny that you asked that. I had a patient one time. She was, oh gosh, like 93 years old, and her husband had passed away in an automobile accident when he was like 30. And she said to me one time, she said, she said, do you think, she says, I've gotten so old. She said, and I'm looking forward to going home to seeing my husband. She'd been diagnosed with cancer and she knew that she had a short period of time. And she said, do you think that my appearance will repulse him? Will he even recognize me? What I've learned to understand is that they're with us along the whole way. Like we have a guardian that's with us constantly that volunteers to ride along for everything. They see the aging process, but the soul does not age. It stays the same. Even with people with Alzheimer's, that soul is perfect and intact. It's the meat suit that's not. So they're with you along the way, and the way that they see you is the way that the soul is, not so much the physical appearance in the spiritual realm, because you leave that meat suit behind. So does that make
Yeah.
sense?
So
Is that what
actually,
you
when
mean?
you go into that realm, you're just a soul, and then when you're looking at other souls, is it like a? It's not you're not looking at them. You're just feeling into their energy, like you know them. It feels some familiar somehow.
Right, but yes, but you can also, I don't, that's probably a question that I should ask my mom
There's no
sometime for
etheric.
sure.
What I'm trying to say is there's no etheric meat suit in that realm where you can see their face and they look like from when they lived on Earth. It's just literally an energy, and you can feel the energy, and you know it's your mom, you know it's your dad, whatever. But it's just a feeling, is it?
But the energy is so precision, I can't think of the right word, that you can envision them as if you're looking at them, if that makes
Because
sense.
you
Does
said you
that
see
make
your yeah,
sense?
because you said you see your cats and stuff like that, your pets, whatever. So they must
Mm-hmm.
look. You must see and look at a cat in that realm. They must look different to
Yes,
a. So they do have a shape,
right.
and they do have a shape, and they do look like a cat. And so
They look like your cat.
yeah,
They look
exactly.
like
So when you're
your
looking
cat.
at like your dead family members, they must have a human visual to them, right?
Yes, they do. When my mother
Okay.
passed away, um, my the whole side of the room filled up with that ectoplasmic portal, and an area opened towards the top of her head. And I saw my grandmother, my mother's mother, walk into the room, and she appeared as I remembered seeing her last. She even had on her leisure suit that she had made that she was buried in. She had on her she used to get this tight curly perm. She even presented him with her glasses, she doesn't need glasses on the other side, but she presented with her glasses. And when her spirit walked over to my mother's bed, she started to stroke the inside of my mother's arm. And I was just on the opposite side of her. And my mother was also sitting at a slant. And my grandmother leaned forward and said something in my mother's ear. Now, I knew that they were communicating because when people pass away, sometimes they choose to pass away. They're sometimes hours before, sometimes a day before, sometimes 30 minutes before, and then they let their body just physically finish. They're no longer in there. Or there are people like my mother that wanted to stay until the last minute. And I know this because even though she was no longer able to open her eyes or to verbalize words anymore, when people would come in physical body and say something to her in the room, like, "Hi, Phyllis," she would mouth and she would move her eyebrows up and down in response to what they were saying. So when my grandmother entered the room in her spiritual form and she started to say something in my mother's ear, my mother started doing that. And my grandmother pulled away, and then my grandmother came forward and said something else, and my mom starts doing it again, and then she pulls away, and then my mom stops, and this happened 3 times. So, and then from behind her, I could see this frantic wave, and I could smell my sister's perfume fill the room. I had a younger sister that was murdered by a jealous Baptist minister's son when she was 21. She had just turned 21, and I could see her, and she was wearing the beautiful puffy sleeve pink dress that she had been buried in, and she came around and actually embraced me. I could feel her, and when she went back around the room of people, the whole wall had effaced, and I was able to see all of the beings that were in there. And I'm skipping ahead. When my mother finally left her body, when my sister arrived and my grandmother arrived, I told my mom, I said, "Mom, Grandma and Robin are here, and it's time for you to go. It's okay. I'm going to be fine. We'll see each other again. I love you." I gave her a kiss. I hugged her the best I could while she was laying down there. She mouthed to me and her eyebrows went up and down, and within 10 minutes, she took her last breath. But what I saw at the side of her bed is there were all of these people waiting to greet her. Some people I recognized from this lifetime, some aunts and uncles and cousins and people that had passed away.
Were they looking at you,
before.
Lynn? Were they noticing you, noticing them, or not?
Some of them were, yes. As a matter of fact, the odd thing was my ex-husband's, my in-laws were there, standing separate from the crowd. They wanted to let me know that they were there to support me and that they loved me, even though their son, was no longer a part of my life. But they knew that I could see them, and I'll tell you why in just a second. When I looked at the head of my mother's bed, I noticed that there were a whole group of spirits that were standing at the foot of the bed, like in a football huddle, like American football huddle, not soccer, but they huddle around. And when they opened up, my mother's spirit was standing in the center, like they were trying to stabilize her spiritual feet. And when I looked over, I noticed at that point, my mother's physical body had stopped breathing. And I'm seeing all of these people that are coming up to her spirit and greeting her. And she's so happy. She's smiling. I mean, in that moment, I wanted to jump into the party too, because there was this beautiful, reception. And there are no words that can express the feeling of the love and elation that comes from that other. There are no words that can express it. There's not a feeling that can touch it. But you recognize it. It is familiar to you. And it's something that you've missed while being here. And so I remember thinking to myself, because I'm smiling, I'm watching her, how happy she is, and these people that are coming up and greeting her one by one. And I remember seeing that she has stopped breathing. And I think to myself, oh my God, if a nurse walks in right now, my mother's just died and I'm sitting here smiling. that's not a normal response. They might think I did something to her. I mean, that
You're
usually
like
people are
you're like Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost, where she can see
yeah.
that no one else can. Yeah.
So, so I called the nurse in, and the nurse came in and pronounced that my mom was gone. And I'm like, can I stay? Because I'm still watching all of the events that are going on in the room with them meeting with my mom. The nurse walked right through them. They didn't even seem to notice that she was even, there. But she said yes. And I mean, it literally went on for 20 minutes, our time. And I say our time because we're linear and time on the other side doesn't exist. It also doesn't exist in the MACE energy program, which is something that is interesting that they work with that part of energy and time as well. But so there is no time. But the thing that I thought was very, very interesting was the fact that there were other beings there that stood with the angels but didn't have wings. And they looked like they had come from somewhere else. And really, if you think about it from a scientific thing, energy can't be created or destroyed. And to think that we are the only humans in this entire universe of all of these planets, that we're the only thing that exists, would be ignorant. There have got to be, with all of the stars in the sky that are sunshines for other solar systems, there has to be other life somewhere. And when those lives finish, they have to go somewhere too. So these beings were beautiful, and they had white hair. They were luminous, and they were very, very tall. That these ceilings were like 10 feet, but their heads were being clipped like right here as they were walking together with the angels. As the people greeted my mother, the room started to thin out. And then my mother and my sister and my grandmother started walking past me out along with these beings that were like walking along with them, helping them to go. And I thought that that was very interesting, that there were beings from other places that were there as well, that were equally as loving and engaging, equally at the level of what most people would call angels. They were also at that stage. You know what I'm saying? So I know it sounds crazy, but when
So
people talk about
what
if
happened with the
if
split? So when, sorry, it was your mum dying? Who was it? Sorry, it was your mum. Did you
my
say?
mother,
Well, so when
yeah,
your mum died, did you actually see us like her spirit, like in the movie Ghost, where Patrick Swayze comes out of his body? Like, is it literally like that? Then you said something about the top of the head or something,
I have seen people come out of their bodies and they go like in a cyclone and go up.
right?
Sometimes they just leave
They go
instantly,
up.
and
Mm.
yeah, they go up. I've seen people sit up and then kind of levitate out of their bodies. In my mother's case, I was so busy looking inside of heaven, for that matter. I was the colors. I mean, we would need 20 more color wheels to even be able to have the colors that they have there. And noticing that there was no light source, that the light seemed to emit from within the air itself. And the lighting was perfect. It was lighting, but it wasn't glarish. And I mean, every blade of grass and everything there is alive with energy that when you look at it, you connect with it and you can feel the life pulsing through it. So it's a loving engagement of everything with, all with energy type thing. So when I was watching all of that, it wasn't until I noticed them huddling at the side of her bed. I'm like, why are they doing that? Why are they doing that huddle? That then when they opened up, she had already come out and she was standing in the center. So I didn't see her exit her body. I saw them collecting her after she had exited her body to kind of anchor her where she needed to be and get her stabilized. And that's when I looked over and noticed that she had stopped breathing. So I missed that moment of her coming physically out of the bottle and that body and them catching her. But I got to see them doing that, to stabilize her spirit,
Incredible.
get her spirit feet.
We'll have
Yeah.
to do another show about this because it's like I'd love to know what you saw in the heaven world when that opened up and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my gosh. I've got, I could, like I said, yeah, couple of shows.
Yeah,
So
we got a
I
couple of more
just,
shows in you definitely. We'll have to at some point start wrapping up because you've been going on a while. I mean I could go on all day, don't get me wrong, but I'm also trying to honor your time as well. I don't want to go over the mark here a little bit, but I mean
well,
Lynn,
and I
thank you.
want,
Yeah,
and Jerry too. I want,
yeah.
I don't want, yeah, he's here for thank you for so much for, having me too. I didn't mean to kind of take that over,
No,
but
no, it's been
anyway,
brilliant, hasn't it, Jerry? It's been incredible to hear these stories, and
Yeah,
it
yeah.
all fit. I mean, a few years ago, it have sounded really far out there, but now it's sort of almost what we're knowing now, and all the information that's coming in. It kind of connects all what we would consider paranormal from years ago into something that makes a lot
mhm,
more sense.
People are waking up.
Yeah,
they
They're
are.
waking
They
yeah,
up.
are.
I wish they just wake up to the fact that schizophrenia is caused by evil spirits and not some crazy biochemical imbalance that they have no proof for, or
They're
any
going to.
genetic kind of thing. I mean, that it's the only way that they're ever going to cure it is to realize the actual cause. You
They're
know?
going to. And you know what else? They're finding that these parasites that they're feeding us in food are what's causing cancer, because ivermectin is now being used to treat cancer. And it's they say that it's working wonders. So everything, all these parasites that they put in us and all this medicine that they keep giving to us in shots and vaccines and all of this stuff that they put into our bodies to take us down, you know, it just, yeah,
yeah. Well, so
it's
I know,
it's
yeah, it's
not a
all the
good thing.
toxic, it's a toxicity build-up, I think, that
Mhm.
kills us
Yeah.
ultimately. And they're trying to hit, have you seen the latest one? I don't know if you've got this in America, but they're actually admitting that they're spraying the skies to dim the sun. So they're
Oh
actually
yeah,
dimming the
they're
sun.
doing that in Britain,
Yeah,
where you always have fog and clouds anyway. And
exactly.
Starmer's like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
But they,
here
yeah.
they're still doing it, not as much. I mean, they
Oh my
used to
God, it's
spray
unbelievable
sunshine
here.
all the time, but I think Trump has drained a lot of their resources. Now, I was in California a couple of weeks ago, and they were still spraying the skies over California.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just, it's all over the United States. It's all over Britain. It's in Germany.
It's
It's all over
everywhere.
the world. It's
Yeah.
everywhere.
They're
There's, you know,
Mm.
yeah,
and
I'm
They're trying to
sorry.
dim the sun as well because they know that we get
oh, that's
special
bull crap.
photon energy from the sun, which is waking us up as well.
Yes, and they're telling you to cover your arms and cover your face and the sunscreen. We need the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need the sun. It's a life thing for us, and they're uh
Look at what
yeah,
they're putting in there. It's aluminum and
Yeah.
what strontium and barium. I mean, these are all toxic things. Aluminum is toxic to all life forms.
Yeah.
And people have it in their blood now because they've been spraying the skies with that crap forever. Now they're putting it in jet fuel also, so it's being spewed out as the jets go over.
And
But you
then
can,
mm,
I mean,
mm,
it looks like a vapor trail, but it stays forever and it spreads out all
spreads
over the
out.
sky.
Yeah.
And they're telling people, oh yeah, that's just vapor trail. Bull crap, that's vapor trail. Vapor trail, they're there for a short while and then they dissipate. This stuff stays forever and it spreads out all over the sky. And it's
Yeah.
all toxic.
And then
They're
it's
trying
also
well,
it's also the metals are going to make us more electromagnetically reactive, and that's why they're putting up the towers, like the 5G towers, because they know that they can actually. It's like iron filings. You remember at school the iron filings? Like
yeah.
if we're ingesting all that or absorbing all that from the atmosphere, we're becoming like iron filings to these magnetic radiation towers.
Mhm.
exactly. And they want to keep us sick because big pharma makes more money by creating medicine for sick people. That's why, I mean, they've had the cure for cancer for years,
Yeah.
but they don't want the cure for cancer to come out because they make a lot of money when
But
people have
just
cancer.
like these antipsychotic drugs, they're making billions of dollars. They don't want the truth getting out there. They
Nope,
want the truth that this is not a physical problem and that their drugs are worthless as far as curing anybody.
it makes them
Nobody's
sicker.
getting cured with those drugs. They're getting sicker.
Mm-hmm. And the side effects, they have to take more drugs.
Right.
So,
Yeah,
it's a vicious cycle.
they're even saying like take a vaccine to cure your cancer now. Like they're giving you a vaccine that's going to give you cancer, and then they're going to give you the vaccine that's going to somehow cure your cancer, even though it's the same technology that's kind of
They
giving them
cause
the
the
cancer.
problems and then they come up with the vaccine to supposedly cure it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just
thank
we're not
It's
heaven
we're
Robert
not waking
Kennedy.
up fast enough, are we? Really? Like if you
you
think
know,
about it, a few of us are, but like,
it's called run like hell. you know, that's what it is.
where do we
You
run
know,
to though? That's the problem. It's like because it's so pervasive worldwide now, isn't it?
it
They need
is.
to lock those people up. They need to lock them up tight and never let them out.
I
I
think
agree.
these world leaders that are doing this, they are heavily possessed. They've got entities that are attached to them.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother show.
Yeah, we should do
Well,
another show on that one.
we could go on that one for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. The stuff that they're finding out with this famous singer about the tunnels and the demonic worship, and now they're pulling in all of these upper officials that were also a part of that, and the Masons. I mean, there's just so much.
Well,
There is so
that's
much.
why they do seances. All these politicians, they meet up and they do seances because they're getting a Faustian trade-off and they're getting attached by it, possessed by an entity that then controls through them and like makes the decisions to basically create hell on earth. That's kind of the
Well, and
Did
killing.
did they show the video of Starmer and the German and the French leaders all sniffing
yeah,
cocaine?
yeah,
Did they show that on your news?
Yeah, yes, and the one guy was trying to hide the syringe,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
didn't do a very good job of it either. I don't know if you saw that
I,
over
I,
there.
I saw. I don't know. Did they
Man,
show that over there in Britain?
well,
I've heard.
I've seen it on like I've had to find it on the internet. You know, they wouldn't just put it out on mainstream news, but they
Oh
would
yeah.
kind
oh,
of
of
hide it
course
a little
not.
bit. But you can still find it. Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
crazy,
of
isn't it?
course not.
They're
And
having
they're
a
not
whale of a
doing
time, aren't they? They're having an
yeah,
absolute whale of a time.
and they're not doing anything about it either. But they will. I have faith that something's got to give here. Either there's got to be a God. I mean, look at all the weather manipulation too.
Oh
In addition to the
yeah.
things,
And
all
there
of the.
that earthquake machine that they have down in on the South Pole
Oh
that
my
Raytheon
gosh,
developed. Yeah, it actually causes earthquakes.
who developed it?
Raytheon.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you've got HARP as well, haven't you, in America? That's near you, isn't it, Jerry?
Yep, they
HARP?
harp too.
Yeah, they've got all of this sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, they heat up the atmosphere and drive the weather.
Oh my
I guess the one
gosh.
good thing to look at this is that the fact that they're going absolutely crazy doing all this stuff must suggest that they're trying to counterbalance the wake up effect that's happening because they wouldn't be doing it otherwise, right? So
Yeah,
as
they're
we're
going.
waking up, they have to put an equal and opposite amount of pressure to kind of keep us like that. So the more we're seeing like that, it's clear it's like
Mhm.
someone standing in front of a wave, but this wave's getting bigger and bigger. And
Right.
at some point, I just think the wave's going to be like a tidal wave. They won't be able to push
Run
back on it
over
so
it.
much. That's what I think's probably happening.
Yep. I think Trump is leading the charge.
I think so.
I
I think he's probably one of them deep down, but I think he's like a good vampire. You know what I
You know what though? I think that when he had that moment of where he was, I think that he was when he came in the first time, the president,
mean?
but at this time he is more involved in a spiritual way. When he got shot in the ear and he went down, he had some kind of an epiphany or some kind of an awakening at that
He
moment.
knew he was
I,
saved
I
by a
yeah,
greater force than himself. He knew because that was you couldn't get any closer than that. You just couldn't.
yep, yep, absolutely. And you know what? This P. Diddy stuff, they're talking to this one guy that was a male dancer who talked about the fact that they wanted that the cabal or the forces that be, whatever you, the Illuminati or whatever you want to call them, wanted Trump to be assassinated like JFK was on TV. And so they set it up. And these things were predicted like back in 2017. So they've been setting up, a lot of this stuff. I mean, people are talking about it back in 2017 that it was, that this one guy that was involved with P. Diddy overheard P. Diddy talking to people that I can't even say on here because I don't want to have CIA knocking on my door, but people that are very high up in the government are all affiliated with that from what they're saying. Allegedly, I have to say allegedly.
Allegedly,
I've done
yeah,
plenty of episodes on how they well we all know this anyway, but they lure them into parties with underage girls, they film it, and then they're
yeah,
blackmailed forever, and then they have to do their dirty work because they know they've
right,
got this person.
yeah,
That's how
that's
they
right.
kind of do it,
And they're torturing people and drinking that, what do they call it? The
Adrenochrome, adrenochrome.
adrenochrome. Yeah.
Yeah. They're
They're a
selling body
bunch of,
parts as well. They sell the babies, but that's why abortion's so big
oh
because they
my
sell the
God.
body parts and the blood and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planned
Oh,
Parenthood.
And they also put the aborted fetal cells into vaccines as well. So that's why it's another big, that's why it's a huge industry. That's why they push it so much about, have as much sex as you want and then just don't worry about it. Just, abort the baby. That's why there's a culture of
They're making
this,
a fortune off it.
they make a fortune
yeah.
off it.
Well, and they're abducting people and locking, like P. Diddy had those tunnels down there where he had a keypad to get into, and rooms that all had those kind of locks, and you could hear people on the other side of them where they're even, could be breeding, allegedly, could be, or breeding women to have babies that are off the radar.
Mhm.
There's no birth
Happens as well.
certificate, there's no prenatal care, there's no identification that the woman's even pregnant, so that they don't even, they can get away with this stuff. So,
There's
and
even someone was telling me he worked for the FBI. There's a sperm bank for, I think it's the Clintons, the Bushes. There's a couple other people as well, and it's their sperm, and then they inseminate women that they bring in. So it keeps their bloodline going. It keeps their seed proliferating, and then
But
the
whatever
bad
God
seed.
knows, and then what they do is with those children, maybe they groom them into positions of power as well, music industry, whatever. I think that's how they do it.
that's the last thing we need is more fools like them.
Oh
Yeah,
my God.
yeah.
Jerry and I had to get to the point where he's retired, I'm retired from our licensed jobs. And we had to get to that point where we didn't give a shit, what happened to us, because now we can come out and talk about this kind of stuff and the stuff that we've seen, because they can't do anything to us anymore. What are they going to do? Take my license? Okay, I'm retired.
Yeah.
Have at it. What else have you got? You know what I'm saying?
You,
It's like,
Lynn, what's funny is I found when I've trying to find work, I keep getting doors slammed in my face. I know I'm a talented person, I've got a lot of background, but it's almost as if I'm being divinely kept on this path to kind of like help the
Yeah.
world in a way, help children, because there's nothing more important for me than helping children. And that's like the fundamental thing that
yes,
everyone should work towards. And it's funny,
agree.
because I need money, I'm kind of force myself to do other things, but I always get doors shut in my face, and I have to come back to this and then
I,
bring
I,
on people
I
like
felt
you.
I
You know?
felt the same thing with schizophrenia.
Yeah,
After 7 years at the state hospital, they were driving me crazy.
yeah.
I couldn't understand. I had part of the puzzle, but not the rest. And I just like, let me out of here, get me away from the schizophrenics.
Right.
So I went back to graduate school. After I left that again, I ended up right back with the schizophrenics again. It's almost like spirit went, well, where do you think you're going? Get back in.
Get back here.
And then I go from the state hospital to the prison. I'm going, yeah, well, okay, prisoners. But then the prison started flooding with schizophrenics, so they started shutting down all the state hospitals. So here I was again, surrounded by schizophrenics.
Yeah.
So there was no escaping them. There
Mate, you're
was
not
like,
you're not getting off this railway track.
no, they wouldn't let me off. They would not let me
Yeah, but I
away.
think the difference is now you've made it your own work, and you're not
Well,
being owned by it. You own
I
it
finally
now.
figured out what was going on. That helps a lot. To have half the picture and not the whole picture, and something's going on, but you don't know exactly whatever it is. I mean, it was crazy. I'm like, let me out of here. You're making me crazy. I was like, I thought I was going crazy at times, with uh, some of the stuff that happened, that what these guys were saying, and then my office crackling, and nobody to talk. There was no, I couldn't talk to anybody except the schizophrenics. They were the only ones that understood. I couldn't talk to any of
Wow,
the
yeah.
psych. I couldn't talk to my friends. I couldn't talk to anybody. The only people that understood were the schizophrenics. They understood what was going on.
Yep.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yep.
I'd love to actually as well, Lynn, talk to you a little bit more if we ever get a chance to another time. But
No,
also
that's fine.
talk
If
about
you
the
want to,
gifts, the gifts that these people have as well, like what we would consider crazy or I wouldn't say schizophrenic, but there might be another psychotic disease, whatever you want to call it, however you label it. These are actually people that what we previously called shamans. Like they're interconnected into that multi-dimensional world, and they're
Well, that's kind
bringing
of
in
what they do in
information.
Africa. They get them and they turn them into shamans because they're already
Yeah.
aware of spirit,
Yes.
spirit, but
Yeah.
it's bad spirit. But if there's bad spirits, there's good spirits. You know,
Yeah.
there it's a yeah. A lot of the trouble they have is they don't know what they're hearing. When it first starts, they don't know what it is, and it sounds just like their own thoughts. And I've had a number of prisoners ask, "Who are you? What are you?" And what the answer was, "We are you." So they want you to think that those thoughts are yours, because we all believe that whatever thoughts come into our head, that's who we are. I mean, those thoughts belong to us. That's way wrong. That's way wrong. And since the educational system here isn't very spiritual, that's what people believe. So they start hearing these schizophrenic voices and they think that that's them, that their brain is broken. And then you got the psychiatric mafia telling them, yeah, your brain's broken. The only thing you can do is take these toxic meds and pay us a lot of money. And nobody gets cured. It does more damage in the long run.
That
Yeah,
is so
That's
true.
probably a good place to end up before you
absolutely.
run out of.
Before we turn into a pumpkin ourselves.
That's right. John, if you would like,
Mhm.
um, Jerry can give you my information,
Yeah.
my email and things like that, and definitely reach out. I'll be happy
Oh,
to
amazing.
do that as well. I'm currently streaming on Gaia. I just did a show with George Norrie, so talking about the Fey realms and things like that on Beyond Belief. I've also just did a quick stint on the local news station here, talking about some of my books and things. And I've been on hundreds and hundreds of podcasts. I've been on Linda Moulton Howe. I've been on George Norrie and Coast to Coast Radio. I've been on Ground Zero. I just recently did. I've been on Dave Scott in Canada. I've been on. I'm everywhere. Vietnam, everywhere.
Love
I've
it.
been
I love it.
everywhere.
And now you've
So
been on the John Cooper show.
that's
You can
right.
tell people.
Woohoo! That's right. That's right. I'll definitely, when you get this finished, please send me the link and I'll post it all over my media
Oh,
so you
lovely.
get a lot of attention. So
Beautiful. And
yeah,
just before you go, guys, let me just get your websites in and I'll edit this in so it comes at the end of this episode, you know. So Jerry, would you mind to go first? Just say your website and any book you've got you want to push or anything.
JerryMarzinsky.com. So it's like last name Marzinsky. If you want to find out how we got to the place where we discovered that these things were entities and not hallucinations, this is the story here. Amazing journey into the psychotic mind. Okay.
Yeah, beautiful.
And when you send the link, John, would you send the downloadable link?
I'll send this raw file if you like. I'll do that. Yeah.
Send the video link.
Yes, I'll send the video link from this Zoom video.
Yeah,
I think you also get it as well, maybe. I'm not sure because you've
I don't get it.
oh, you don't get this because I've hit
You
record here my end.
send it.
Before I do that, Lynn, can you just mention do you have a website or books or anything you like to push?
yes, my website is www.lynnmonet.com. That's LYNNMONET, like the painter. These are my books. You can get them on Amazon. You can also, not all of them, but I'm only selling a few of them through Amazon because Amazon has enough money and they can't sign your books. However, if you live outside of the country, please get it from Amazon because the shipping is way too expensive. So, but if you're within the United States, or if you don't mind paying the extra for me to sign your books for you and personalize them, you can directly order them through my website. I have these 4 books. Omnipresent is going to end up being a 5-book series, starting with the very, very
Hold it
first
up,
book here.
Lynn, hold it up to the camera a bit more. Yeah, okay. Great.
Okay, this is an actual event that occurred in that house that I didn't move into. This is the house.
Wow.
What happened next? This is The Colors of Heaven, which is a book about death, dying, and the beautiful things that I think that should be celebrated with people that are passing to help take the stigma of death and dying away for people. I've currently have coming out to be released as soon as it's finished being edited, the last 2 chapters. Another book in the Omnipresent series called 111 Becadon Drive, which is a book about a ghost that was going from townhouse to townhouse, crawling in bed with women and doing things and groping men too. He was just a pervert. I have a picture of him that I'll be glad to share. And I'm currently writing the book of Omnipresent Gnome, Place Like Home, which talks about how I was introduced to the elemental and fairy realms and the pictures that I have and the property that I own that have them on there. I'm doing that, and I'll be doing 2 books in a sequel of 2 books with that. So I've got about 5 more books that I'm going to be writing over the next 2 years. But yeah, and Jerry, my son has just moved to Scottsdale, Arizona. How close to you are you there?
Oh, about somewhere around 100 miles.
Oh, that's not bad. I have a half sister that lives in Phoenix. So
I
yeah,
love how in America 100 miles is like, oh, it's only 100 miles. So like that's like the that's
Yeah,
also the other side of
pretty
the country.
yeah, it's an hour and a half drive. It's not bad. 100, it's not something that you'd want to have to do every day, but yeah,
Oh,
because I'm going to be flying out to help him get settled in here within the next month or two. So Yeah.
I've been
If
to
you and your
Scottsdale as well.
what's that?
I've been to Scottsdale, Arizona as well.
Have you?
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's good
Oh,
fun.
wow.
Yeah. By the way, just before I go, I just wanted to tell you something. I did a past life regression yesterday, and one of the things that came up was that I was some kind of elf or fairy like thing. And I was like, this can't be right. I'm some kind of elf or fairy that's floating. And she said, no, actually, you'd be surprised that that's actually, there's a realm that exists here that you could. And I went, okay. And when you said that, I was like, okay, you kind of validated that experience a little bit. So just wanted
Yes,
to
and
share that.
I can knock your socks off on that one. Like I said, I've got pictures. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got some beautiful thing. I was actually asked by the Fey realm to write 3 books to connect the humans with the Fey realm, because since the frequencies are elevating, more people are going to start to see them. They're going to be able to go back into their capacity of helping. I even argued with them and I said to them, "Are you sure?" Because everybody's going to want to make you a pet. You're going to be like the genie in the bottle, where they're going to have expectations and demands on you. Are you sure? Because this is where the human mentality is at. And they're like, no, it's time, because those people who are also elevating in the frequencies that they're in, aren't going to be of that mentality. They'll appreciate them and work together with them more so, and that they need to be reconnected. So that's why I'm writing those books. The next one is You Don't Know Me, and then I haven't decided on the third one yet. But it talks about some beautiful things that I've learned from them. Like if you expectorate on a seed before you plant it, a vegetable seed, the seed has the ability to analyze your saliva, so that when you plant it into the ground, whatever your body is lacking, that vegetable plant will grow with all of the components, so that when you eat it, you can nourish yourself fully with that. I mean, beautiful things about crystalline studies in the ocean, about bioluminescent beaches that night fae live on. Night fae like coming out during the night, because they say that the trees are quite the talkers during the daytime. And we've heard about that network of roots underneath, and how it's like a telephone system with them. I've learned things that you could not make up. They told me that they'd give me downloads. They've been giving me downloads. And yeah,
Nice.
definitely. I've been on a lot of shows about it, and
Let's do a
there are
show
a
on
lot.
that. Let's do a show on that. I think
Okay,
that'd be amazing. Yeah, that'd be
okay.
fantastic. And
So
yeah, keep in touch. And also, you mentioned during as you were speaking, the last couple of hours, you've mentioned you've got a photo of this, a picture of this. If there's any of that you do want us to share, I know some of that you don't, but would you mind emailing it to me, or Jerry can pass it on to me? And what I'll do is I'll insert it into the edit. I might even try to make it kind of really nice and visual for the show. So if you'd like to do
that's
that, it'd be
fine.
great.
Whatever you want. And as a matter of fact, my email is omnipresent.thebook@gmail. So if you want to reach out to me, omnipresent, people can get a hold of me there. The book@gmail. That's my information. So yeah,
Brilliant. All right, it's 1 a.m. here, so I should probably get to
that's
Wow.
okay. It's okay.
Hopefully I haven't woken
Thank,
up people in the house. But yeah, no, Lynn, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you've
oh,
gone through quite a lot, but there's so much amazing. You've got to be pretty happy in a way for like what you've drawn out from all these experiences, and it's just incredible. Like you're very lucky in a way. I don't want to say lucky, but you know what I mean. You're just got blessed is a good word maybe in a
I am blessed, and I'm so fortunate to have gotten to come across Jerry, who has validated so much for me. And
yeah,
I'm so grateful to him for that as well. And thank you
yeah.
so very much for allowing me to,
Yes.
the opportunity to be on your show. And I
Yes.
would love to come back.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
Lovely. And yeah, of course, Jerry, I've got to give a big up to Jerry. Obviously, he's like a regular guest on my show now. Everyone loves him. And, we can keep talking about this subject over and over again because there's so much more layers of the onion. Every time we pull a layer off, there's another one there. And, it's such important work. It's probably, some would argue, it's the most important work you could be doing at the moment. So,
I've
Jerry,
got more interesting people for you to talk to too.
yeah, put me onto them. Yeah, I'd
I'll
love to bring them on.
put
Yeah,
you on to
yeah.
Yeah. And I've got some also. I've got a demonologist named Nathaniel Gillis. I don't know if you've met him,
No.
but yeah, when you say demonologist, it's like, people are like, oh, they hear that demon word. But he is the most humble man. And he's got balls the size of China. We're not still taping, are we?
And
You can cut that.
that's
You
fine.
can
I'm not.
cut. You
I'm
can.
not. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay, you can edit that out. But
yeah.
he's got balls the size of China, and for him to engage and go into what he is learning about and different things like that. He's all about the white light, but he studies the black light. So he's not in the black light so per se, but he can explain a lot of really deep stuff about some of the other things that
Yeah, that's brilliant.
and his father has a church too. So he's my go-to if there's something that I've got questions about, because he's an amazing young man. He really, really is. I can't say enough good things about him. Just
Brilliant.
like I can't say enough good things about Jerry.
Jerry, there you go. That's how my show works. It's just like people will mention someone and I'll go to them. It's like an organic, like breadcrumb trail that I follow. It takes me to the
Yes.
right place, so that's how I do it. All right, guys, thank you so much. Stay in touch and I'll do my best to edit this, and also I'll send you the raw footage, Jerry, straight after this, okay?
Oh yeah. And what do I need to do to shut this down here so you get
So I'm going to stop